Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So continuing on with the Charmasloka Prakaranam of Mumuksupadi by Pila Lokacharya with a commentary by Manavalabha Munigal. We were discussing last time the first part of the Charmasloka, Sarvadhanamam Parityajya. So that's the first quarter of the verse. So the Charmasloka is an Anustup verse of 32 syllables. It can be, as you know, a regular Anustup or regular sloka can be divided up into two halves of 16 syllables each, or into 4 quarters of 8 syllables each. So we finished the first quarter, Sarvadhanaman Prityaja, and we've explained the meaning of that. And now we come to the word mam, which is in the beginning, the first word of the second quarter. So let's go straight to the text and have a look at Sutra 211, where Sutra 211, where Vilalokacharya Manavala Mamani begin to explain the word mam, which of course means me, and refers to Lord Krishna. When Lord Krishna is speaking, he's saying, mam, me. So 211, mam, me, the one who is, number one, the savior of all. Number two, your menial servant. Number three, awaiting your acceptance. 4, accepting your sins with relish. 5, your refuge. 6, the one who protects, refusing to leave, even if like naturally cool water, spontaneously heating up. The one who unites Lakshmi, wants to separate us. Wants to separate, okay. So, mam means me. The one who is dedicated, Dikshita, to the protection of everyone, such as there is no doubt, will he save me or won't he save me? Okay, so the first point about mam, about me, when Lord Krishna says me, we a part of property, part of Sharanagati is that we have to have great faith, or what's called Mahavishvasa. Mahavishvasa means we have great faith that the Lord will save us. So when the Lord says mam, when he says me, when he indicates who's going to help if you surrender, who is the person you're going to surrender to, and why would you surrender to that person, right? The Supreme Person, Sriman Narayana. Because number one, the first reason why you should surrender to him is he is the savior of everyone. He's going to protect everyone. And so there should be no doubt. The first aspect of mam is that there should be no doubt that he'll save us. Right? So we shouldn't be thinking, when we surrender to God, we shouldn't be thinking, will he save us or won't he save us? No, our salvation is assured. And our salvation can only be assured if we surrender to God and God alone, because God is the only one who can assure you that. Other people may or may not be able to help a person, but God certainly can. So that's the first aspect of mam. Me also means, in the second sense, your menial servant who undertakes whatever you command. So in this sense, interesting. The master himself becomes like the servant. And what's an example of this? The example given here is, as when you say, stop the chariot in the midst of the both armies. This is a quotation from Bhagavad Gita 122, the first chapter, 22nd verse. So it's interesting because most commentators on the Bhagavad Gita, they don't, like Shankara, I think even Ramanuja, there's no commentary. They don't give any commentary to the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because the first chapter is setting the scene. So what happens in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, as we all know, is that there's the scene is set where Arjuna, first of all, wants to see what's happening. So he says to Krishna in the beginning, the reference here is Senayor Ubayor Madhye. He commands Krishna in this sense, Krishna has become his menial servant. Krishna has become Partha Sarati. Partha Sarati means, the word Partha is the name for Arjuna. And in Sanskrit, the word Sarati means a charioteer, right? Or a chauffeur, a person who drives the chariot. So they're both sitting on the chariot, but the person who has the reins in his hand, the person who's controlling the horses, the person who makes the chariot go and stop and etc. is Lord Krishna. The person who orders where to go, what to do, the master, right, is Arjuna. So Arjuna, even though Arjuna represents all of us, he represents the soul, he is the one who orders. So it's very similar to the situation that we find ourselves in this material world. We are the soul within the body, and the body is like a chariot. The body is a chariot. The body is a vehicle. we put food in the body, just like we put fuel in a car. but unlike our normal experience, for instance, we've probably all had the experience of taking a taxi. When you take a cab or a taxi, or in the case of more costly endeavor, you get a limousine. You have what's called a chauffeur. You have a person, and people in India can perhaps relate to this more. Whenever you rent a car in India, and usually they don't allow you to just drive yourself, but renting a car means you rent a driver as well. So this is what happened with Krishna and Arjuna, that Arjuna had Krishna as his charioteer. This was a condition of Lord Krishna's participation in the battle of Kurukshetra, that because Krishna was understood to be a very powerful personality, so Krishna himself had an army, and the army was the army went to fight on the side of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra's 100 sons, the Kauravas, and then the Pandavas, the 5 brothers, had Lord Krishna on their side. But Lord Krishna, even then, it was like asking Lord Krishna to fight with one hand tied behind his back. He actually was forbidden to fight at all. So he was only allowed to be the charioteer. So it's an interesting story about this, which I'll just tell quickly. Okay, that Krishna was sleeping, and Duryodhana and Arjuna went to ask Krishna about this, about himself and his army, and that, because Krishna had indicated that, okay, you can decide amongst yourselves on which side I will help, and which side my army will help. And so Duryodhana, not having faith in Krishna himself, right? We see here from the first meaning of Mam that we should have faith in Krishna himself. We have to have faith in Krishna himself. Whereas Duryodhana, he had more faith in the numbers of Krishna's army than in Krishna personally. So Duryodhana, he wanted to get all of the soldiers. Already the Kauravas outnumbered the Pandava army, but Duryodhana wasn't satisfied with that. He even wanted Krishna's army on his side. If Krishna's army was going to be on any side, it was going to be on Duryodhana's side. That's what because he had faith in numbers. Whereas, okay, this is the same thing as a prapana. A prapana, a person who is, and Arjuna was the prapana. Arjuna represents the surrendered soul. So Arjuna has faith in Lord Krishna. He has faith in Krishna over and above all of these many numbers, millions of other people. So would you rather have an army of millions of people, or would you rather have Lord Krishna on your side? The devotee of Krishna, the prapana, the surrendered soul to Krishna, wants only Krishna. Mam ekam. Mam, he wants Krishna. He doesn't want all the other army. So Lord Krishna was sleeping, and they went in there. This story has very much meaning. about property also. So they went in there to wake up Lord Krishna and wait till he woke up and to ask him to divide up himself and his army and to be on different sides. So the idea was the first person that Krishna would see when he woke up would get the first choice. So Duryodhana wanted to have the first choice. He was very insistent that I should be the one who has the first choice, right? So Duryodhana went right to Krishna's side of Krishna's bed and right near Krishna's head, because he thought when Krishna wakes up, Krishna's going to immediately see me. And then when he sees me, he'll ask me, okay, so what did you choose? Do you want my army or do you want me? And Arjuna was submissive, and Arjuna went to the foot of the bed. He was at Krishna's feet, right? And we know that being at a person's feet, surrendering at a person's feet, we often hear this, the lotus feet, be at the lotus feet, surrender to the feet. The feet are the lowest part of the person. They're there on the ground. Right? If we throw ourselves down at the feet of somebody, even in the West, we understand in ancient days of medieval days of chivalry, if a person would throw themselves at the feet of the other person, that means that they will be begging for them to surrender to them and for their mercy. So Arjuna knew this, and so he sat he went to the foot of the bed and waited patiently there. So when Krishna woke up, it was very interesting. The very first thing he did was he looked down at his feet. He looked to see who was at his feet. So that's the point. He looks to see who's at his feet, because the persons who are at his feet are the ones who are surrendered to him. So at that instance, he immediately asked Arjuna to have the first choice between himself and the army and his army. Do you want me on your side, or do you want the army on your side? And Arjuna naturally picked. Duryodhana was afraid. He thought, oh, if Arjuna gets the first choice, he's going to pick the army. He was thinking like a materialist. He was thinking about the numbers. But Arjuna didn't want that. He wanted Krishna. He wanted Mam Ekam. He wanted Krishna only. He wanted to surrender to Krishna, and he wanted Krishna only. Even if Krishna could only be his chauffeur, even if Krishna could only be his charioteer, he wanted Krishna, and he didn't care for the millions of soldiers in Krishna's army. So Duryodhana got what he wanted. The materialist point of view is we feel that millions of soldiers are better than having the Lord himself. Whereas the Prapata, or the devotee, the bhakta, the person who is the surrendered soul, the refugee, Prapata means refugee, at the feet of the Lord, like as typified in this story by Arjuna, wants Krishna alone, even if Krishna can only be his menial servant, which is the meaning here. Another quick story I'll tell you about the feet, about surrendering to the feet. And we all know when we see a great spiritual personality, we can surrender to the feet. The very first time I went to Sri Rangam and I went inside the temple to the main sanctum, when I came in front of Lord Ranganatha Periparamil, the Mula bearer, the Mula deity, and I had darshan for the first time, there was an archika there, a pujari, and he took a lamp, and he showed the deity to me. So what he was doing, he was holding the lamp up, and then he went straight down to the feet, because Lord Ranganatha is lying down. He's lying down on Shesha, in Yoga Nidra, in mystic sleep. And this is the pose of Periparamil in Lord Ranganatha in Sri Rangam. So he went right down to the feet after showing the whole deity. He went right down to the feet, and he especially said to me, look here, look here. And he showed the feet of the Lord to me. Very first thing he showed me. And he said to me, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tas sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami ma sujaha. Do it here, do it now. This is what the guy said to me in English. Meaning, this is the place to do surrender, at the Lord's feet. That was my experience. That was the first time I went to Sri Rangam Temple. And the first time anybody had seen me there in the deity room, they said, look, the feet, here's the feet, do it here, do it now, surrender to the Lord. So that made a big impression upon me, And I could understand, of course, that it wasn't just the place, the feet that they were talking about, but they were talking about the Lord himself. We have to take shelter of the Lord himself. And that is what property is. Okay, so in that sense, here it's mentioned, Bhagavad Gita 122 is the context, where Arjuna says to Krishna, Senayor Ubayor Madhye. Okay, Senayor means, the word Sena means soldiers, and it's plural. So Senayor means in the midst of the soldiers, right? Ubaya. Ubaya means two sides, right? Right. So sometimes we hear Sri Vaishnavas are called Ubaya Vedantins. They're the they know the Vedanta of Sanskrit. They know the Vedanta of the Tamil hymns of the Vedas, of the Alwars, excuse me. So they have these two Vedantas which they study. They study the Tamil Vedanta and the Sanskrit Vedanta also. They're called Ubaya, or both. Ubaya Vedantins. So Krishna says, Senayor Ubayor Madhye. Madhye means in the middle. Take me into the middle. This is Arjuna's command to Lord Krishna. Take me into the middle of the two armies. So this happens in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It's setting the scene, right? It's setting the scene for Arjuna's lament, Arjuna's confusion, right? And because of Arjuna's confusion, again, right, that is karpanya, we have to feel helplessness and confusion, right? Then we can only surrender to God, right? So this the whole Bhagavad Gita is a song of surrender, is a paradigm for us to understand the surrender to the Lord, which is the system in Sri Vaishnavism of property. And the Charma Sloka, of course, typifies or explains to us all the parts of this. So these are the first two meanings. Ma means he alone, right? He's the one who can only save us, not him, not anybody else, right? And Mam also means that he is our servant, just like he agreed to be the servant. He appeared to be the servant of Arjuna by taking him into the middle of the two armies, right? And similarly, just like Arjuna, we are seated within the chariot of the body, material body, and Lord Krishna is seated next to us as our chauffeur, as our charioteer. And we desire to go here and to go there and to do this and to do that in order to further the goals that we want, right? And our goals are sense gratification, our goals are religiosity, our goals are, economic development, financial goals, or whatever our goals are. And ultimately, our goals should be also for liberation, moksha, so artha, dhamma, kama, and moksha, right? Kama, artha, dhamma, moksha, like these different purusharthas, right? And to further those goals, right, Lord Krishna acts as our charioteer within the body, and whatever we desire, he facilitates that. In the Upanishads, it said there are two birds in a tree. Imagine there's a tree, and the body is compared to the tree in the Upanishads. So when we see a big tree with lots of green leaves on it, there might be two little green birds that are sitting in the tree. And if we hear the birds chirping away, we can know that there are birds there. But when we look, we don't see them because they're hidden, they're camouflaged because they're also green. So those two birds in the tree are the Atman, the individual soul, Jivatman, and the Paramatman, the supreme soul, which are situated within the heart, within the body. And just like Krishna and Arjuna are on the chariot in the middle of the war, in the middle of the battlefield, Kurukshetra. So all of these things come to mind when we start thinking of Lord Krishna becoming our menial servant. Again, stop the chariot in the midst of both armies is the quote from Bhagavad Gita 122, which exemplifies this idea that Krishna becomes our servant. Of course, he's the supreme master, and we've been talking about this throughout the whole book of Mumuksupadi. We've been explaining how Krishna is, of course, the the Sheshi, he is the master, and we're the, I'm sorry, the Shesha. We're the Shesha, we're the servant, and he's the Sheshi, the master. But in this case, the roles are reversed as part of the understanding of this word mom, in a sense. So, thus, there is no need to wonder. Seeing his greatness and my puniness, will he associate with me? So, again, we have these different doubts. And the word mom in the Charmasloka of Krishna is here to clear away those doubts. The first doubt that it clears away is, if we surrender to Krishna and to only to Krishna, is he able to, is he going to save us? So that doubt should be cleared away. And the second doubt that needs to be cleared away is, seeing his greatness and seeing our puniness, will he associate with us? Yes, not only will he associate with us, but he's doing our bidding. We have a desire. Our desire is to get out from this material world, to stop the cycle of birth and death and suffering, right? Even happiness in material world is a type of suffering, right? The happiness in the material world is compared to, it's not real happiness because it's temporary. It's only a cessation of distress. For example, if one is in the desert and one doesn't have any water, and then one is dying of thirst, right? If somebody is dying of thirst, if you feel thirsty, you're in great anxiety, and someone gives you water and you drink the water, that quenches your thirst. But for how long? For a moment, or for it's very common experience you have is that if you're very thirsty, you drink water, but that's not enough. You drink one glass and it's not enough. Like that. Immediately, as soon as you finish drinking, while you're drinking that first glass, you feel some satisfaction, right? You feel and that satisfaction or that happiness is really just the cessation of your suffering. You stop suffering thirst when you're drinking the water. As soon as you finish that glass of water, you immediately feel a little bit thirsty again. You immediately have to drink more. One glass is not enough, right? Just remind me. Right? If I sip, then it quenches my thirst. But again, I feel like I have to sip immediately because it never goes away. So in this material world, sometimes we feel like, oh, I enjoyed that. You enjoyed something, but actually that enjoyment is temporary. And again, the suffering will come. So enjoyment is not permanent in this material world. So the type of enjoyment that we enjoy here, if we enjoy any form of enjoyment, it's very temporary and it's not lasting. It's not eternal. So it's, in that sense, it's ephemeral. It's not considered to be permanent or lasting or real in a sense. So seeing his greatness and my puniness, will he associate with me? That's also the doubt. The doubt is that Lord Krishna is, of course, the supreme. It's like going to see the greatest person in this world, the greatest politician or the greatest king or greatest emperor, like that. And we're a very lowly person. Will he give us an audience? Will he take any notice of us at all? The soul is infinitesimal, 10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, according to the Shastra, but it means minute, not even perceivable, like a speck of dust, even smaller, atomic in size, right? So insignificant. Whereas the Lord is actually Vibhu. He's completely, this is Anu. Anu means atomic, right? And Vibhu, the Lord is Vibhu. In fact, the whole universe is his body. So nobody can be larger than the Lord. He's all pervasive. So the largest of the large and the smallest of the small associate with each other. And somehow or other, the largest of the large, the greatest of the great, becomes the servant, in a sense, of the smallest of the small. He deems to come with us wherever we go in our wanderings in this material world as the super soul within our heart, to help us with our goals, whatever they may be, like that. So this is also this doubt that the Supreme Lord will associate with us and will help us, right, as a servant. right? This is a doubt. Would you we if you went to ask a favor from the emperor of the world or the king of the world, you would doubt. You would doubt that he would, first of all, that he would even see you. Second of all, that he would serve you and help you with your desires. But in the case of the Lord, it's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does. So these are the first two meanings. The third meaning, me, the one who, out of eagerness to save you, awaits consent of you, the one to be protected, as stated in the passage, even though he is all-knowing, the Lord of all, ever merciful, since he is the one who supports the system of samsara, waits for a request for protection. So this is a quotation from Lakshmi Tantra, which is a very famous book of the Pancharatra Agamas. And this is from the 17th chapter, 10th verse. So even then, he takes the position of a servant, and he simply waits for our order, right? He patiently waits. He patiently waits for us to turn towards him, right? To surrender to him, like that. That's also described in that analogy of the two birds in the tree. One bird is trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree, the fruits of the body. The body has so many things that it can enjoy by touch, by taste, by smell, by sight, that we can enjoy so many things. We like to look at nice things. We like to smell nice things. We like to taste nice things. We like to touch nice things, right? We like to hear beautiful music, whatever it is, right? We like to enjoy our senses, even our mind and our intelligence. We like to study certain things, or we like to play certain mental games, or whatever it is. We like to engage our mentality also, our subtle body. And we enjoy all of these things through the senses of the body, right? So that's like the bird, the little bird, the Jivatma bird who's sitting in the tree. There's different fruits in the tree, and the bird wants to enjoy those fruits, right? So the bird sees a fruit and pecks one fruit, and that fruit is sweet. But that sweetness only lasts a small amount of time. It's temporary. Then the bird pecks at another fruit, and the other fruit is sour, right? Or one fruit may be rotten, right? So depending upon the fruit that the Jivatman bird tries to taste, right? There may or may not be a good reaction for that Jivatman. So whatever fruit we try to attain here in this material world, material fruit, right? Material result, right? How we try to enjoy in this material world can sometimes we enjoy there's bitter fruits, there's sweet fruits, there's sour fruits, there's rotten fruits. So the bird is trying all these fruits. The other bird is simply a witness. The other bird is just watching. He's facilitating his friend eating, but he's just watching, like that. So that's described in that analogy in the Upanishads also, that these two birds are not the same, right? One represents Paramatma, one represents the Atma, the Jivatma. Okay, so once again, the third idea is of Mam, the third explanation of the word Mam, is that the one who, out of eagerness to save you, so the Lord is eager to save you. I think we've discussed this before when we read Srivachanabhushanam and even other parts of Mumuksupadi. We've understood that the Lord is not indifferent towards us. He wants to save us. He wants any sort of excuse to save us. He has to have an excuse, though. He has to have some sort of excuse. The excuse is property, our surrender to him, right? What does Lord Rama say in his Charama Sloka? He says, Sakrideva, right? Sakrideva Prapannaya, right? So here the Lord Krishna says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, right? Sakrideva Prapannaya. So if one once only surrenders to me, Prapanna means to be surrendered. So Sakrideva means once only. Sakrideva Prapannaya tava asmi iti. Tava asmi iti. If he says, Iti means thus. It means that there's direct speech given in Sanskrit. Anytime you see iti, it means what's said before that, before iti, is supposed to be direct speech. So tavasmi. Tavasmi means I am yours. I am yours. Tava means yours, right? It's Shasti Ekvachan of you, right? I mean, it's genitive singular, of yours, of you, right? Yours, tava. Tava asmi, I am. Asmi means I am. So I am yours. I am yours. I'm your servant. I'm your slave. I'm your property, right? That's what I am. And that's my realization. My realization is that I am your property. Do with me whatever you like. Tavasmiti chayachete abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadam yetad vratam mama. That is Lord Rama's vow, is that he will protect that person, right? So he has an eagerness to protect. He's so eager to protect us that he says, even if you only once simply say, I'm yours, right? Not you don't have to go through so many, you don't have to go through so many hard sadhanas, so many difficult rituals and so many difficult ways. All you have to do is just think or know or realize that I'm yours one time only. And I'll take that as an excuse to save you. Because I'm eager to save you, I'm looking for that excuse. So just give me that excuse and I'll save you. Right. So that excuse is just a realization, a momentary realization that we are the property of the Lord. Even if it doesn't last forever, that realization, if we simply can think of that one time, Sakrideva, then the Lord will save us. So he is looking for that excuse to save us. He is eager to save us. So that's the third thing. He's eager to save us. So let's read from the footnote here. The footnote says, Lakshmi Tantra 1710, the meaning of this passage is somewhat at variance with this is what she says, the Patricia Mummy, the author of this particular version of Mumuksupadi translation. The meaning of this passage is somewhat in variance with the Tengalayacharya's doctrine that the Lord has Nirankusha Swatantriya. Nirankusha Swatantriya means unconstrained autonomy, such that he can sometimes choose to accept the soul out of his own autonomous desire without waiting for a request, right? So naturally, the Lord, we always describe the Lord as completely independent, Swatantra. He is completely independent. So he's independent. He can save us or he doesn't have to save us. Even if we don't surrender, he can still save us, right? So he has autonomous desire, is the way that she puts it here. Further, in this text, in Sutras or Churnas or Churnikas 226 to 227, Kilalokacharya says that we should consider this request as worthless because the Lord doesn't need it. That's very interesting, right? Up until now, we've been talking about the system of property, and we know when we read Srivachana Bhushanam that actually, which is the next book in the series of these Rahasya Granthas, which we actually read first before we started to read Mumuksupadi. In Srivachana Bhushanam, it's talking about that property itself or surrender, Sharanagati, is actually only an initial part of our salvation, an initial means of salvation, right? We always talk about what is the means of salvation, right? That is the means Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. The Lord teaches different means. He teaches means of self-effort that we have to engage in, and we have to work very hard to perform Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. But it's so hard to perform Karma Yoga for moksha that in the Gita it explains that only one example is given of a person who attained moksha through Karma Yoga, King Janaka. That's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So we don't find a lot of people taking to reaching moksha through Karma Yoga. Through Jnana Yoga, of course, there are people but mostly people who achieve moksha through jnana yoga, that normally we understand that many times people get sidetracked in jnana yoga and they end up achieving a type of impersonal moksha or kaivalya or somewhat isolation from the Lord. So it's not really the moksha that Vaishnavas prefer. The personal forms of moksha, there are 5 forms of moksha, and the personal form of moksha, or the personal forms of moksha, the other 4, Swarupya, Salukya, Samipya, and Sarupya, right? These are considered to be real moksha because they involve the service of the Lord. These are considered more important by Vaishnavas, and these are the goal by the Vaishnavas. So, in general, so we want this personal type of liberation where we actually have an active relationship with God, a deep, direct, actual active relationship where we serve Him. So, what is the means of that? What is the upaya? What is the means of that? So, bhakti yoga is a means. So, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, these are all means of great effort and great qualification. If we want to perform those things, it takes a long time. It can take many lifetimes. It has to be done perfectly. And at the end of life, we have to remember the Lord if we follow these paths. So this is all very, very difficult with lots of qualifications like that. Then we come to property. Property is considered to be an easy, quick, and safe way. Okay, so property is also a means like that. But here, what we're saying, and in Sri Vachanabhushan it was mentioning that even property is not really the way. If we think property is the way, that's also not exactly correct. Property is an initial means, and in Sri Vachanabhushan it mentions that the first initial means is to control the mind. Controlling the mind means controlling the senses. Controlling the senses means the mind controlling the body. Controlling the senses in such a way as to not be completely running on instinct like the animals, but to do what the Shastras say. The Shastras say, now is the time to inquire about the Supreme. So the Shastras tell us that when you can control the mind and body and not go here and there simply for your sense gratification and economic development, whatever other goals you have, and you can control yourself, and then at that time, the Lord will send you an acharya, a teacher. You go to that teacher and surrender to that teacher. That teacher will teach you the Tirumantra, the Astakshara Tirumantra Namo Narayanai, the Dvaya Mantra, Sriman Narayana Charano Sharam Padeshmati Narayanai Namaha, and this Charama Sloka. If you haven't already read Bhagavad Gita, he's going to teach you this. Even if you have read it, he's going to teach you the meaning of this. And then by that the teacher is therefore considered the means. So first of all, controlling the mind and body and senses is a preliminary means. Approaching the teacher is a means, right? Even Arjuna, the first thing he did was he surrendered to Krishna as a teacher. He didn't surrender to Krishna as God until the end of the Bhagavad Gita, but he surrendered to Krishna as a teacher. He said, "You're a teacher. You teach me." In the beginning, in the first chapter. So when he became bewildered, actually in the second chapter. But anyway, so in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, he surrendered, but he didn't fully surrender in the sense of doing property until this sloka, the very last final, the final order of Lord Krishna. So then we think surrender is the means, right? Surrender is the means, but even surrender is not the means. Surrender is also a primary an initial means. It's an initial means. It's how we get started. But who is the real upaya, the real means of liberation? The real means of liberation is the Lord Himself. Because when we surrender, we're giving it all over to God, and we're saying, it's up to you, Lord. You have to do it. You have to do everything. You're the most qualified. You're the master. You're the owner. You're the controller. You support us. We are your property. We're your servant. We're your slave. You have to save us. We have no qualification. We can do nothing to save ourselves. Right? We understand that now. So now it's your turn. You have to take that up. So what he's saying here is, the third point here is that He has eagerness to save us. He has eagerness to become the upaya, right? So in the beginning, we may be told by the scriptures, you have to control your mind and body. You have to meditate. You have to do all these things. You have to approach once then God will send you a teacher. And then when you get the teacher, you have to surrender to the teacher, and the teacher will teach you. And then you have to learn from the teacher. All these things are means, right? And the teacher will help you to do the surrender. There's different ways of doing surrender. There's different types of property of surrender. There's what we call swarta property. Swarta property means swarta, means the person is able to do the property himself, even without a teacher. We have examples of this, right? Gajendra is an elephant, even an elephant. One may think, oh, I couldn't do that myself. I couldn't surrender to God just by myself. I need a guru. No. Gajendra didn't have a guru. Draupadi didn't have a guru. Even Vibhishana didn't have a guru. They went straight to God and they surrendered to God. They were able to do that because they understood what the meaning of surrender. And so their surrenders are swarta property. But then there's other types of property where we involve the acharya, we involve the mediatorship of a teacher who is a mediator, just in the same way as we also go through Mahalakshmi as a mediator. So if we want to do a type of property which is 100% successful, this swarta property may not be successful by some people. They may not be able to do it properly. So we go to the acharya, we go through the praying to Mahalakshmi like that, and that in that way we become 100% successful. Okay, but ultimately, who is the person who actually saves us? Who is eager to save us? It's the Lord. So he is the actual upaya. He himself, the Lord himself, is the actual means of liberation. Not controlling the mind and body, not approaching the guru, not surrendering, but property. The Lord himself is the actual means, like that. So that's being emphasized here in the third meaning. The Lord himself is the means, and he is an eager person to save us, like that. He just needs an excuse, as I said with Ramacharma Sloka. He's just saying, just think like this one time, momentarily, a mental realization that you're my property. I'll save you. That's what he's saying. So what she's saying is the point is brought out much more clearly and forcefully in the Sri Vachana Bhushana, which I just mentioned, right? So she's saying that here too, where a distinction is made between paragata svikara, acceptance, where the Lord takes the initiative, and swagata svikara, right? Swagata means our own. So acceptance where the soul takes the initiative and requests protection. So there's a distinction between these two things, as I said. When you approach the Lord and you take the initiative and you surrender to him, etc., or where he takes the initiative and he accepts the person who is so clueless, right? Where the soul here in this material world is so clueless that he can't even take this initiative, easy initiative of property himself. The Lord somehow or other, he continues to act and to send people like the acharya, and to send to give us ways to surrender to him, to come to him in so many ways. He just keeps trying to save us, right? He's eager to save us. Okay, so Manavala Mahamunigo says that while the former, that is acceptance of the Lord, where the Lord takes initiative, right, will never fail. Even when the soul's desire and request is lacking, the latter may not always succeed. So if we look in Sutra 142 of Sri Vachana Bhushana, that's what's explained. In Manavala Mahamuni's commentary, he says, if you think that you have to take the initiative and you have to go and you have to surrender to the Lord, otherwise there won't be any moksha, right? That may or may not work. So it's very interesting. Sri Vachana Bhushana not only tells us, so we're preaching about property. We're telling people, do property, surrender to the Lord. Think that you're the servant or the slave or the property of the Lord, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Jnanat moksha. From that knowledge, you will attain moksha. The Lord will then become the upaya. He will then become the primary means of our liberation. So we tell people to do that. If you do like this, then the Lord becomes like this. They may or may not do it. They may think, no, I can't think. I'm not, I am myself. I am my own owner. I am not a servant. I am not a slave. I'm not a property of anybody. Right? They may think like that. We have innately with us, we are covered by ahankara and mamakara. We have I-ness and minus. So not only do we think that we are the possessor of many things, we even think that we possess ourselves. And it's this thought that we possess ourselves, that we're the ownership of our own soul, that is also keeping us from liberation. It's keeping us from moksha. It's keeping us from the Lord saving us, like that. So it's very difficult for people, even the people who are surrendered. It's described that there are bubukshus and mumukshus. There are the people who are interested in sense gratification. Of course, they don't understand that because they think I and my are going to enjoy. But even the people who are surrendered to God and they say, no, I can perform bhakti yoga. I can perform karma yoga. I can perform jnana yoga. Through my efforts, I will lift myself up. That is ahankara. That is ahankara. Even that is ego. That is ego. So there's a tinge of ego there in these other processes, which is why we've discussed sarva dharman prityaja, means that all these other processes of effort, they also have to be given up. They have to be given up as means, as upayas. We have to give up the idea that karma yoga, jnana yoga, or even bhakti yoga is a means for our salvation. Because when I think that bhakti yoga is a means for my salvation, what I'm saying is I can perform bhakti yoga. I am qualified. I am the owner of the self, and I will self-initiate to do Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasim, Sakam, Atmanivedanam, all these 9 processes of bhakti. I will do them, and I will become successful. That is ego, to think that you'll become successful by performing this path of effort, right? The Tengalaya Acharyas of the Southern School, they say, no, these are actually impediments because they involve ego, the slightest amount of ego, like that. Only when we surrender, and again, I'll give the example of the drowning person. A person who's drowning, the lifeguard is coming to save him. The lifeguard is coming to save him. Now, the person may cry for help or not cry for help. The lifeguard is watching. The Lord is watching us, right? He's seated in the tree along with us. The 2 birds are in the tree. He's watching us at every moment. So don't think that he's not watching. He's watching. He's just waiting for that. The bird who is tasting the sweet and sour fruits. The other bird is the Paramatma is just watching and waiting for that first bird to turn towards him. When that first bird towards, then immediately they engage in a relationship. So the Lord is watching. He's looking for an excuse. He's waiting for us to turn towards him. And when he sees the slightest indication, he saves us. Similarly, the lifeguard is watching the people who are swimming. When he sees a person in trouble, he's just waiting. As soon as he sees a slight indication the person might be in trouble, the lifeguard springs into action. He's waiting for that, like that. What to speak? Of course, the person who's in trouble can yell out. He can, like the Prapana engaged in Swartha property. He can try to surrender, and he can say, I need help. He can pray to the Lord, I need help. Or he can pray to the lifeguard. He can yell out to the lifeguard, I need help, please save me. Like that. But even if he doesn't, the lifeguard's watching. He's always watching. So, but when the lifeguard approaches him, he has to give up. He has to go limp. Right? In most cases, people don't. They're hysterical, and they even try to drown the lifeguard. Right? The person who's trying to save them. They're just grasping onto everything to try to keep their head above water. This is actually the way it works, right? So, but the best thing that the person can do is simply relax and go limp, like a dull piece of matter, right? Just you're the property of the Lord. Just act like that, right? Just act like his property. Just completely give yourself over to his control, like that. That is property. That is real surrender, right? So he becomes the upaya. He becomes the means. Okay, so that's the point. So here there's the active surrender and the passive surrender being talked about, right? The passive surrender is always successful because the person, the lifeguard or the Lord is going to save that person who is passively surrendered. The active surrender is, I'm drowning, but I'll try and help the lifeguard. No, you're drowning. Just relax, lay back, and let the lifeguard save you. That's the best way. That is the best way. So, okay, so she's going to give some examples of this. So this is explained in Srivachana Bhushanam, which is the next text. So examples of successful paragata svikara, right? Paragata svikara, where the Lord takes the initiative to save the individual, are Guha and Hanuman. So Guha was a hunter, right? Rama met different people in the forest. When Sita, Ram, and Lakshmana were in the forest, they met different people. After Rama was sent for 14 years to the forest, and the last year, Ravana came and kidnapped Sita. So he was looking for allies to help him like that. So he got this Guha as an ally. Also Hanuman, he met Hanuman and Sugriva and Bali, these different personalities. So Guha and Hanuman, whom Rama accepted on his own initiative without any desire or request on their part. So that's the examples in the Ramayana. And remember, according to Srivachana Bhushanam, Ramayana is the greatest scripture next to the Vedas, right? The Vedas, of course, are Swata Pramana. They're called self-evident knowledge. But next to that, the great scripture is the scripture of surrender. The scripture of surrender is the Ramayana. It's full of surrender. So here we have the surrender of Guha and Hanuman, how Guha and Hanuman helped Rama, right? And so it mentions here that without any desire or request on their part, right, the Lord Rama accepted them. He accepted them himself. So that they're the examples in the Ramayana of this paragata svikara, or the Lord accepting, the Lord taking the initiative of accepting somebody, right, without them surrendering to him. Just he took the initiative. Lord Rama took the initiative, and he accepted Guha and Hanuman. So and the example of swagata svikara, where somebody took their own initiative to request protection or to accept, to surrender to the Lord. It was illustrated by Bharata, who was running the kingdom while Rama was exiled to the forest, whose property to Rama, requesting him to return to rule Ayodhya, was denied. So his brother Bharata, when Rama first started leaving Ayodhya, Rama was banished to the forest. And what happens is, it says that Ramayana says that the people couldn't bear it. His brothers, his father, nobody in the kingdom could bear the separation from Rama, their beloved Rama. So they all went along with him. So then Rama said, look, what kind of exile is this? What kind of exile can there be when the whole town or the whole city comes with me? Then that's not really an exile, right? It's like saying, go to solitary confinement and I'll also come with you. Then it's not solitary confinement anymore, right? The punishment is to go to the forest and be alone and be without all the people and without all the facility of Ayodhya, of the big city. So if the big city comes with you, then there's no punishment. It's ridiculous. So Rama understood this was against the spirit of this idea of being exiled. So he told everybody to go back. Bharata specifically came and said, I don't want to be king. I don't want to be king. I will rule in your stead with the shoes, he ultimately said, but I will put your shoes there and your shoes will rule the kingdom. So I will take care. But that's what he ultimately said. But he requested Rama to come back. He surrendered to Rama. That is Sharanagati. That is property. He surrendered to his brother Rama and said, Rama, I'm surrendering to you. Please, I'm begging you, come back. Come back. Come back and you take your rightful place as the Lord of everyone. Right? I accept you like that as the king. I have no wish to have any part of ruling. So he surrendered to Rama. Now, normally when we surrender to Rama, when we surrender to Krishna or surrender to Sriman Narayana, that should be successful. But in this case, because that was initiated by Bharata initiated that surrender. It wasn't successful. That wasn't a successful surrender. So we can learn from the successful surrenders of Guhadev and Hanuman, which did not involve them actually surrendering, but was the initiative of the Lord to accept them. Lord Rama just accepted them through his own initiative. That was successful because it relied solely on the Lord. Whereas the surrender of Bharata to Rama depended upon the effort to surrender to Rama, right, by Bharata. That was self-made, right? So it was self-instigated. That was unsuccessful. So that proves, these examples prove property itself is to be successful does not involve any effort at all. It's simply by the knowledge that we are the property, the servant, the slave of the Lord. So we should always remember this, that even if we think, oh yes, surrender is the way, therefore I'll work very hard to surrender. No, you don't have to work very hard. The surrender comes automatically. And the best type of surrender is where the Lord himself takes the initiative. We have to work in such a way that we are seen by the Lord, that he has an excuse to save us. He has an excuse to save us. Actually, his excuse to save us is our karpanya, is our helplessness, just like the drowning person. When the Lord sees that we're drowning, when the Lord sees that we've given up all these other ways, we've given up karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, that we've given up straining ourselves, trying to perform these other paths of self-effort, then and only then will the Lord come and save us, right? When a person's drowning and he has some flotation devices around him, he has some things which are floating around him, and the lifeguard sees, oh, this person he's trying to hold on to this raft, he's trying to hold on to this other flotation thing like that. All right, I'll let him try to do that. Maybe he can save himself. When the lifeguard sees the person has completely given up, even though the person might be surrounded by floating objects, but he's not even trying to stay afloat by grabbing hold of these objects, right? Then the lifeguard springs into action. He realizes this person has no other savior but me, and therefore I have to go and I have to save him, right? So this is in Gajendra Moksha, the Lord realized that, and he went so quickly to Gajendra. He even didn't dress properly. His ornaments were out of place and his clothes were out of place when he went. He went so quickly on the river to save Gajendra. So Swagata Srikara, right? The self-initiated surrender, right? It's not as good as this Paragata Srikara, or the surrender which is initiated by the Lord. Because this Swagata Srikara, or self-initiated surrender, right, of Bharata in the Ramayana didn't work. He surrendered to the Lord and said, come back to Ayodhya, but it didn't work. He continued. Rama went off into the forest. So it did not yield the fruit. So Namalwar's own salvation is also interpreted as a case of Paragata Srikara, Namalwar. So they say the Lord just decided to save Namalwar, completely unprecedented by his own initiative. So he made no initiative. And the Lord's right to do that is unequivocally confirmed in the third book in the series, right? There's a series of these books, right? I was just listening again to the first lecture on Mumuksupadi by Dr. Alwar, and he was explaining about the sequence that one should study the Rahasya Granthas of Pila Lokacharya. Mumuksupadi And then after Mumuksupadi, Srivachanabhushana. And the third thing which is studied is the Acharya Hridayam. Acharya Hridayam is the next book which is studied. And that book is actually not by Pila Lokacharya, but by his younger brother. And it's an explanation of of some questions that came up after writing Mokshapadi and Srivachanabhushana. Some of the very orthodox Brahmins, Sri Vaishnava Brahmins in Sri Rangam, were criticizing Pila Lokacharya for seemingly writing things which were a little bit against some of the rules, the minute rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. And so they went and they actually complained. They complained to Lord Ranganatha. They went to the Sanctum Sanctorum and complained that this person is writing these shastras in which he says things which go against your orders, O Lord. Your orders are there in the Dharma shastras, these small orders about caste and creed and all these different sections of society, and people should definitely follow these things. And therefore, we think that you need him to explain why he's writing against these things, seemingly writing against these things. And so we're just letting you know this, like that. So through the Archakas, through the Pujaris, the answer of the Lord came back, Paraparamal. He said, okay, bring him here. Bring Pillai Lokacharya in front of me and let him answer these charges that you're making. You know, you're very orthodox people and you're making these charges. So let's see what he has to say for himself. So then they went to find Pillai Lokacharya, but they couldn't find him. So they found his brother, Alagiya Manavala Peramal Nayana is the name of his brother, his younger brother. And Alagiya Manavala Peramal Nayana, right? He was brought to answer these charges against his brother, Pillai Lokacharya. So on the way coming to the temple to speak before Lord Ranganatha, the answer to why his brother had written Srivachanabhushana and Mokshapadi and written these things, right? On the way there was a procession of Namperamal, the Utsava deity, the processional deity of Lord Ranganatha was going around the temple. So when they came to cross over the Uttara street where the deity was coming, right? The Utsava deity was coming. They stopped in front of the Utsava deity of Namperamal, who is the same as Lord Ranganatha, right? He's the manifestation of Lord Ranganatha that goes around in the streets outside the temple, because the main deity that is immovable. So the movable deity is out there, the processional deity. And then when we ever see a procession like this, we immediately offer our obeisances and we bow down and we follow along with the procession. So this is what the devotees did, and along with Alagiya Manavala Peramal Nayana, right? He got up and he started to explain before Namperamal the reasons. And so the procession goes along the four streets that go around the temple, in the south, in the west, in the north, and in the east, like this. So he continued to go with the procession and explained everything. He explained everything to Namperamal because Lord Ranganatha wanted to know the answer to this challenge, and the devotee explained this. That explanation was turned into a book. And that book is Acharya Hridayam. That is the explanation. So that is the third book that has to be studied. So, okay. So what's said here again is that we talk about the Paragata Swikara, or the Lord's initiative to save somebody. One example is the liberation or the surrender of Namalwa, right? And the Lord's right to do that is unequivocally affirmed in Acharya Hridayam, right? Sutras 94 to 113, which we have to go and see, and we have to read. See Pillai Lokacharya's Srivachanabhushana with Manavala Mamuni's commentary, and the edition she suggests to check is by P. Raghavacharya Ramanuja Swami, Madras, R. Raj Gopal Naidu, 1936, and Alagiya Manavala Peramal Nayanar's Acharya Hridayam with Manavala Mamuni's commentary in Srimad Varavara Munindra Granthamala, which means a series of books of commentaries of Manavala Muni or Varavala Muni. Volume 1 edition and publication by P.B., the famous Acharya of the last centuries, P.B. Anangacharya of Kanchipuram, 1966. So she tells us exactly where to go to find that out. Okay, so now, of course, to be fair, right, the author here of this translation of Mumuksupadi wants to tell us about the other side of the coin, the Vedanta, what Vedanta Deshika says about these particular points. So we have the southern acharyas of the Tengalai school and the northern acharyas of the Wadagalai school, are typified by Vedanta Deshika, who is the start of the Wadagalai Sampradaya, Deshika Sampradaya. So Vedanta Deshika, on the other hand, more closely follows Vedanta and Pancharatra by affirming. So understand that all of this, remember, all of this in this footnote was based upon the statement given here, even though he is all-knowing, the Lord of all, ever merciful, since he is the one who supports the system of samsara, waits for a request for protection. He's waiting eagerly for our request for protection. He wants to save us, and he wants that excuse to save us. That comes from the Lakshmi Tantra, which again is the Pancharatra Agama, chapter 17, verse 10. So what he's saying here, she's saying here, is that the Vedanta Deshika, on the other hand, more closely gives more importance to statements in the Vedanta and other statements in the Pancharatra by affirming that the Lord deliberately refrains from acting to save the soul until he gets some small initiative on the part of the soul to use as a pretext, vyaja. So it's really the same thing. Once again, when we look at the difference between the Wadagalai school and Tengalai school, the northern and southern acharyas ideas, the southern acharyas are saying, look at the Ramayana. In the Ramayana, Guhadeva and Hanuman, their surrender was very easy and very successful because Rama initiated it, right? Whereas Bharata's surrender, which was self-initiated, was not successful. Actually, was not actually successful. And that's the example the southern acharyas give. Whereas Vedanta Deshika, he says, he emphasizes the fact that there has to be some small effort on the part of the individual. So this is the difference between what we call cooperative grace and causeless grace, right, or irresistible grace, right? So the type of grace that we're talking about is typified by the example of the Wadagalais of the mother monkey and the baby monkey grasping hold of the mother monkey again, and the Tengalais, the southern school, talking about the mother cat coming and taking the baby kitten. Again, we give those simple examples to explain this point. So Vedanta Deshika, on the other hand, more closely follows the Vedanta and the Pancharatra by affirming the Lord deliberately refrains from acting to save the soul until he gets some small initiative on the part of the soul to use as a pretext, yaja. He directly attacks, Vedanta Deshika directly attacks the Tengalai Acharya's exaggeration of the Lord's autonomy. Okay, so the idea is that the Tengalais are exaggerating, or they're simply just mentioning the Lord's autonomy. The Lord's completely autonomous. He can save somebody if he wants to. He's completely autonomous. He can save you if he wants to save you. If he doesn't want to save you, he doesn't have to save you. But he can, out of his own free will, save somebody. And so the Tengalai Acharyas are emphasizing that. Vedanta Deshika says that the Tengalais, he attacks the Tengalai Acharyas for saying that, and saying that that's an exaggeration. How the Lord's autonomy can be an exaggeration, I have no idea. But anyway, Vedanta Deshika is seemingly giving this point because it threatens the Lord's egalitarian mercy. Okay, so that's a point of logic that Vedanta Deshika is bringing up. He's saying, well, if the Lord, out of his free will can save anybody, then why doesn't he save everybody? It's a good point, right? So with charges of showing partiality to some and cruelty to others, right? Why is it that he picks Namalwa and he gives Namalwa moksha? Or why does Rama accept Hanuman and Guhadeva out of his own, autonomy, his own free will? He chooses them and saves them. right? And why does he not accept Bharata? He's cruel to Bharata. He doesn't accept Bharata's surrender, right? You've given this example in the Ramayana. Well, can you defend this idea, right? This is what Vedanta Deshika is saying. In order, it's very, very close, okay? Let's say the idea, I mean, even with the Ramacharma sloka, somebody can look at it and say, therefore, you have to say Tavasmi in order to be saved. No, that's not the point of Ramacharma sloka, according to the Southern Acharyas. The Northern Acharyas say there has to be something, there has to be some works to go along with your faith, right? Just like Catholicism and Protestantism and Christianity. So they believe in cooperative grace. There has to be some works, however meager. There has to be some meager initiative by the soul, and then God will save you, right? Whereas the Tengalai say, no, there doesn't have to be any submission at all. There doesn't have to be anything. Doesn't have to be any effort at all, right? There is no effort. And the Tengalai Acharyas go to great lengths to explain that surrender is not an effort, actually. It's simply a realization. It's simply understanding that I am the property of the Lord, I'm the slave of the Lord, I'm the servant of the Lord. So in order to protect his own egalitarian mercy and respect and preserve the measure of autonomy, he has given each individual soul. That's another point by Vedanta Deshika. He says, how can the soul be independent if God is the one who decides whether the soul, is liberated or not completely? If there's absolutely nothing, if it's absolutely not up to the soul in any way, shape, or form, even a small decision by the soul, right? The soul should have that choice to either turn towards God or away from God. We should have that minute independence, right? Otherwise, it contradicts Vedanta. That's what Vedanta Deshika is saying. And in support, the Shastras and the karmic order as its impartial judge, right? So there should be some impartiality of God, and that's why he sets up the system of karma, and which is given there, explained in the Shastras. So Vedanta Deshika affirms that the Lord does not save without some scripturally enjoined token of the soul's willingness to accept him, right? So this is what Vedanta Deshika says, and he says this in his Rahasya Trayasara in the 23rd chapter, pages 634 to 40, and also in chapter 24. So in chapter 23 and chapter 24, in chapter 24, 705 to 706, I believe that this is the she's referring to the edition that we all have in English of Rahasya Trayasaram. If people don't have that edition of Rahasya Trayasaram by Vedanta Deshika, then just let me know and I will provide you with a download that you can read it for yourself, what he says. And you can decide for yourself whose argument is better. Of course, they're very, very close, the Wadagalai and Tengalais on this point, right? Because it's not that the Wadagalais are saying there has to be great effort. We have other schools of Vaishnavism where they say, no, there has to be this great effort of Bhakti Yoga, Kama Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or specifically Bhakti Yoga. It has to be done with great effort. There has to be so many rituals, so many pujas, so many fire ceremonies, so many japas, like that. There has to be remembrance of the Lord at the time of death. All of these things have to be done, for a long time, very sincerely, right? Even beyond one lifetime, in order to be successful. So that is outside of Sri Vaishnavism, other Vaishnava sampradayas. Within Sri Vaishnavism, you've got this. Basically, it comes down to this: you have the northern school of the Wadagalai acharyas following Vedanta Deshika, who say a minute effort is involved in the soul actually accepting and surrendering to God, and the Tengalais saying no effort whatsoever is involved. The surrender is not an effort; it's not a real effort, so we can't call it an effort, right? Even if the baby kitten struggles, the mother will still save it. Even if the drowning man struggles, right, the lifeguard will still save him. So even if the person acts like he, in such a way hysterically, that he's going to drown himself or even try to drown the lifeguard too, along with him, still the lifeguard is able to overcome him and save him, even against his will, which is the autonomy of God. The autonomy of God is that he can save you, he can take you to moksha, even against your will. That is his autonomy. To say that the soul has this minute independence means that in some way God is helpless. God is never helpless. God has complete autonomy. God has complete power. God can overcome anything, even if the so-called minute independence of the soul. And that's the point. So the Tengalacharya we simply praise the nature of God and his Ananta Kalyana Gunas, his unlimited autonomy over all. We say that there cannot be even a tinge of lessening of that power that God has, whereas the others emphasize the minute independence of the soul. Okay, so it's really really both things have some truth in them, like that. But the actual process for both Wadagalites and Tengalites is practically the same, and therefore I don't think people should really bother getting all hot and bothered about these differences. The Tengalites accept one way and the Wadagalites accept the other way, like that. But here it's very clear what Pilalokacharya and Manavala Muni's opinions are. If you find Vedanta Deshika's opinion to be more acceptable, if you read Rahasya Trayasaram and you say, yes, it's very, very close, but I actually feel like I have more faith in the way that he says it, we have no problem with that, and you can definitely do that, accept that. So, okay, so getting back, that was the footnote. So now we've got we've gone through three meanings for the word mom, right? We didn't think that mom, being a one-syllable word, would have so many meanings, but here it is. We're not finished yet. So the fourth point, first point, second point, third point. Fourth point, me, mom means me, the one who accepts with relish the faults of you whose mind is confused with right and wrong action. Dharma, adharma, di kulam. Dharma, adharma, religiosity and irreligiosity, right? Diya kulan, right? A person who is confused, right? What does Lord Krishna say in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? Arjuna becomes morose. He becomes upset. He sees his relatives and his teachers on both sides of the battlefield. He realizes that if he engages in warfare, his friends on his side may be killed, and he may have to kill his friends on the other side, his relatives, his teachers, even, like that. It's such a position. He fears that this will mean that the whole of society will be ruined. What will happen to all the wives of all these great fighters? What will happen to society? The wives will be taken advantage of. There'll be unwanted progeny. The whole of society will be ruined. All of these Varnashram rules will go out the window, and the whole society will be in ruin, like that. And not only that, personally, I have to kill my relatives and friends and teachers. So he becomes completely confused and emotional, and therefore he doesn't know what is right and what is wrong. Right? This is another example, another definition of what a Shudra is. Right? We have the Trivarnikas in the Varnashram system. We have the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. We have the intellectuals, the administrative class or political class. So we have the entrepreneurs, the business class, and then these people are all leaders. These are all leaders in society. The Sudras are followers. The followers because they don't know what to do and what not to do. Lord Arjuna becomes a follower of Krishna. He approaches Krishna as a teacher because he doesn't know what to do and what not to do. He doesn't know the difference between what is dharma and what is adharma. It's not that easy. He's confused. So this is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. So the point here is that mam also means me, the one who accepts with relish the faults, right? What is this called in Sanskrit? It's called sabhogya hetaka kripa. The Lord actually enjoys the faults of the soul. The soul has these faults, The Lord enjoys those faults because it gives the Lord an excuse to save the soul. This soul is so fallen. Let me save him. Like that. I will enjoy saving him because he has so many faults. The person who has the most faults is the first in line to be saved. We hear this very often. Patita Pavana is the name of the Lord. He saves those who are fallen. In the Bible, we have the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son is the bad son. The bad son gets a big party thrown for him when he comes home. Everybody's so happy when the bad son comes home, when the disrespectful, disobedient son comes home, like that. What about the son who was always obedient to the father, who never left home, and who was always the nityas? Now, what about those people in Vaikuntha who are always serving the Lord? The Lord is used to their service and they're never disobedient to the Lord. What about them? Doesn't the Lord love them more? No, the Lord loves saving the errant soul. He loves saving the downtrodden soul. He loves saving that soul who is completely gone against him. There's a statement in English, is some people like a challenge. The Lord likes a challenge. It's a challenge to save people in this material world. The lifeguard likes a challenge. He likes to be able to, he doesn't like to just sit in his tower all day, but if he sees somebody in a little trouble, he likes to spring into action. He enjoys that. So similarly, that the example is given of a mother. The mother tells the child, don't play in the dirt, don't play in the mud. You'll get dirty. Don't do that. The child loves to play in the mud. The child goes out and plays in the mud like we play here in this material world. We go out and we do all sins. We're here for unlimited lifetimes, and we commit every sin imaginable and those which are not imaginable also. We commit all these apparatus and sins and offenses and things like that. Everything we do throughout our lifetimes like that. And the Lord still saves us. He enjoys saving us. Like the mother, when the child plays in the mud, the mother enjoys, even that she might chastise the child, of course, like that. Why did you play in the mud when I told you not to play in the mud? Why did you do that? Like that. But she is weeping tears of joy that she has she now has the opportunity to clean the body of her child. She's bathing the child and she's happy. She's happy cleaning the child. Any mother can understand this, that, cleaning a child, especially an infant, cleaning the dirt away from an infant is horrible. It's a horrible act. Most people don't like doing it, but the mother enjoys it. The mother enjoys it because she loves the child so much that she even enjoys cleaning the stool of the child or the dirt away from the child, the mud off the child if the child has played in mud. So this is called Sabogya Hetuka Kripa. This is the situation. Krishna enjoyed teaching Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita. He enjoyed clearing his doubts. He enjoyed the fact that Arjuna was confused and was morose. It's for this reason you need not fear that I will scorn you upon seeing your faults. We're going to come to the point about Sarva Papebhyo here. The Lord is going to forgive all of our sins. Right. So let's have a quick look here. So, is it not that the jiva needs to have a certain level of spiritual maturity in order to surrender? Yeah, of course, if you want to initiate the surrender. But the point being made here is the Lord has autonomy. He can save you. He can. There can be surrender, which is the surrender is initiated by the Lord. He acts in such a way as to make you surrender. In fact, do you think that your surrender is only occurring because you're doing it? What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, from me, I seated within their heart. Right? I'm seated within their heart, and I give them knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So the knowledge, the remembrance, that mental state. What is surrender? Surrender is that mental state where we understand that we are the property of the Lord. Where does that come from? I think one day we just meet a guru, or we just read a book, and we come to that realization by our own self. No, we don't come to that realization by ourselves. The Lord gives us that realization. at a certain point, we'll have that realization, right? Otherwise, without his help, so many people are in Maya, so many people are in illusion. How do they come out from illusion? By their own efforts? Nothing can be achieved by our own efforts. That's the point of surrender. The point of surrender does my lost cell phone somehow or other come to a realization that it's my cell phone and return to me? No, right? If I lose my property, does my property then come to the realization that it should be with me and come back to me? No. That's why it was explained. We should think of ourselves just like inanimate objects. Of course, Vedanta Deshika finds this somewhat offensive. He thinks that we have to emphasize the independence of the soul, even if it's only minute, like that. And we're used to this. We're used to hearing this. We're used to understanding that our surrender should be self-initiated. No, that's exactly the point being made here by the Tengalaya Acharyas. That if you look in the Ramayana, the people the person Bharata who had a self-initiated surrender to the Lord, he thought, I'm going to go to Rama and surrender to him, right? And by my effort of surrendering to him, he has to come back and rule the kingdom. But Rama that failed. That failed. So whatever happens in this lifetime, we see the Lord working through us. Whatever we do, the Lord is working through us. He is doing that. He is doing our surrender for our own benefit, for his pleasure, right? Sabhogya heteka kripa. He enjoys the sins of the world, and he enjoys saving the souls, and he enjoys saving the most fallen. He enjoys, and it's all being done by him. It's his Leela. This is Leela Vibhuti. What is going on now is his Leela. His Leela is that we're here in this material world, that we're sinning, and that he works through us and saves us like that. If we feel in any way that we are doing something like that, that means there's a slight tinge of ahankara. We therefore have to feel ourselves to be like the property of the Lord. Somehow or other, due to false ego, we've stolen away the property of the Lord. It is not my soul. There's no such thing as my soul. There is only his soul. Who are you? I am his soul. I am his soul. I am not my soul, right? So whereas other forms of Vaishnavism, they teach you, you're not that body. You are the soul, right? You are the soul. Okay, we are the soul. We agree with that, right? Who does the soul belong to? The soul belongs to him, not to us. In this material world, we think the soul belongs to us, and therefore we have what we call, there's two things, two parts to ego. There's mamakara and ahankara. Mamakara is somewhat easier to give up. Mamakara means I have a car, I have a house, I have a family, I have a nation. All these things belong to me. All these things have a relationship to me, and I am the Lord of all these things. Right? That is mamakara. That means that these things are mine. Ahankara means the soul is mine. The soul is mine. The soul is not yours. Even the soul is not yours. You thought that the soul is yours and to do with what you want, to surrender to God or not surrender to God. No, the soul is not yours. It's not your property. It's not for you to say that the soul surrenders or doesn't surrender. It's for God to say. It's for God to initiate. And if God initiates the surrender, then that surrender will be perfect, as the examples of Guha and Hanuman explain in the Ramayana. So that's what the Tengalaya Acharyas are saying. Look, it's a subtle point, okay? It's a subtle point. The subtle point between the Tengalayas and the Vadagalais is what? Vedanta Deshika and the Vadagalais are emphasizing the minute independence of the soul. Which we don't totally disagree with, but okay, the Tengalaya Acharyas are emphasizing the supremacy of God. God is so supreme that he is therefore totally in control of the soul. The soul is totally his property, right? There is no, like I said, my cell phone has no independent will. My cell phone has no independent action, right? Our relationship to God is like that. We are like his property. The slave, other Vaishnavas, they talk about we're the servant of God. Okay. And maybe the servant has a day off, or maybe the servant decides to do something on his own sometimes. All right. No. We are like a slave. A slave has no separate desire than God. God's desire, we do it. It's not a matter of thinking, yeah, will I do it or won't I do it? We have to do it. We must do it, right? Just like an inanimate object, the cell phone has absolutely no will to not even a slight amount of independence. Cell phone is completely dependent upon me. It's my property. It has to do exactly what I say, and I use it. I use the cell phone. Cell phone doesn't make calls by itself. It doesn't do things by itself. It's never, even if it gets lost, it can't initiate itself to come back to me, right? So we have the three Vaishnavas always explain it like this: that we're here in this material world. It's as though we have stolen ourselves away. We're the slaves of the Lord, and we've stolen ourselves away from Him, and we've tried to become our own masters. But our nature, our eternal nature, see, Vedanta Deshika tries to say in the Upanishads, it says that the soul is a doer. And so the soul being a doer, even a minute doer, therefore, because it has this, he says, because in the Upanishads it says that the souls are made in the image of God, and God is a doer, so therefore the soul has minute doership or independence. But the cell phone is not. The Tengalacharyas say no. The soul is just like a material thing. It has no will of its own. It is like a slave, and it can't. When it thinks that it owns itself, when it can direct itself, that's when it's here in this material world. Right? When you're in, there is no separate thought, and that's why the Sattvika Tyaga is used. Sattvika Tyaga mantra is where we say, whenever we do something, we say, I am not doing this. The Lord is doing this through me. Bhagavane Swaniyamya Surupastiti Praviti Shashesha Tekorasena Anena Atmana Karta Swakesya Prakarane Swaradhanaka Prayojanaya Paramapurusha Sarvashesha Shriyapati Swashesha Bhutamidam Pratahashnanakyam, before we take a bath or whatever it is. Whatever we're doing, we add that at the end. And we say this before and after we do everything. Right? That's there in Ramanuja's Nitya Grantha. If we study the Nitya Grantha, it's performed externally by Vodagalized. Whenever they do something, they also agree with this, right? In a sense, in their actions, they agree with this. If you talk to them philosophically, right, Vedanta Deshika will emphasize a little bit of the independence of the soul, but in actual practice, the Vodagalized practice a completely different thing. They say the Lord is doing everything through me. And then they do the thing, and then after they finish, they say, the Lord did that through me, right? The Tengalais don't bother to say that, because the Tengalais realization is that, it's not wrong to say that. It's not wrong to have that prayer of Sattvika Tyaga, to give up the doership, right? To give that over to the Lord. And the Tengalais, admittedly, they say, Kena Vachamana Sendriyeva Budyapana Vapa Swabhavat Romi Yadchagalam Brasmai Narayana Smapayami is normally what both Kalais say, right? The Tengalais definitely say this, right? So what it means is, whatever I do with my hands, my words, my mouth, whatever I do is offered to you. It's not really me that's doing it. You're doing it. You're doing all these things, and therefore you get the result of doing all these things. Who benefits from this? Who benefits? We read in Srivachanabhushana, it was asking who actually gets the benefit. Who gets the benefit of the surrender of the soul? Who gets the benefit of property? So most people will say, well, the soul gets the benefit because the soul's here in the material world, and then the soul goes to liberation. So the soul enjoys liberation like that in service of the Lord. So the soul benefits. Between God and the soul, who benefits more? God benefits more. Why? From liberation. Why? Why does God benefit more? God benefits more because the soul is like a cell phone. The soul is like God's property. Does the cell phone benefit when it gets returned to me if I lose it? No. The cell phone doesn't benefit. I benefit because it's my property and it's now returned to me. So God benefits from the soul being returned to him, or the soul's mentality to understand that he's worth. It's a very subtle point. Okay, so the real point is that Vedanta Deshika and is in theory he's emphasizing the minute independence of the soul. The Tangalized are saying no, the complete autonomy and the complete the greatness, the absolute greatness of the Lord cannot be impinged or infringed on in any way by this idea of the soul having a minute independence. If you have a slave, he's 100% your slave, right? He's not 99. It's not like, he gets one day off to be his own person. No, 100%, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, he's your slave, right? If you have a piece of property, it always belongs to you. It doesn't have some minute independence. Slave doesn't have. So we think of the soul as being like a slave or being like a piece of property. Others talk about we're all servants of God, and maybe the servant has a day off where he does his own thing, or we can decide how we want to serve God, right? You have okay, the scriptures tell me to serve God, but don't tell me how to serve God. Let me decide that. I'll decide myself how I want to serve God. I want to be a gopi, I want to be a cowherd boy, I want this, I want that. As soon as you start saying I want, doesn't mean it does. It means that you're not totally, absolutely surrendered. So the difference between the two schools' thoughts about this is that one, the Tengalites are just emphasizing the God's supremacy overall, absolute total control and supremacy overall, and the Wadagalais are emphasizing the minute independence of the soul. Okay, like that. So both are right in a certain sense, and we can have arguments about it. There are quotations from the scriptures either way. But the point is that the Tengalites here are trying to emphasize the compassion of God, and they're trying to explain the word mom. And one of the ways that they're trying to explain the word mom is that the Lord has so much compassion for the souls that he doesn't wait for the soul to surrender to him. He actively tries to get the soul to surrender. He actively tries to save the soul, just like the lifeguard, when he sees even if he doesn't think the person may be actually drowning, he goes and he checks. I gave this example one time. I went with my wife swimming, here in Hawaii, and we went out, and we're older people like that, although we're very, very good swimmers like that. So we went out. The guy from the lifeguard tower, he came out on his board, and he was just going past us, and he just said to us, "Are you okay? You're right? Yeah, no problem," like that. So we immediately told him we were fine, like that. But he checked on us. So the Lord similarly is within our heart. He's checking on us every second of every day of our unlimited lives in this material world. He is checking constantly to see, because we're his property, we're his slaves. So he's constantly checking on us like that. And he's taking any excuse to save us, because why? He enjoys saving us. Just like I enjoy finding my cell phone again if I've lost it. I feel happy when I find it, and I benefit from finding my cell phone much more than the cell phone benefits, like that. So the Tengalites are saying we see it from the point of view of God, and Vedanta Deshika is trying to see it from the point of view of the soul more, like that. Both are right, and both are also wrong in certain senses. So we have that dichotomy, and we have those different aspects in the scriptures that can be brought out like that. Just like when we preach to people about property. The first thing we do is we tell them, you have to surrender to God. As soon as we tell them about property, you have to surrender to God, like that. But here we've got to a point where we're explaining, actually, you don't have to surrender to God. God wants to save you, and he's going to arrange to save you. So all you have to do is realize that, and he'll save you. It's only realization that is stopping us from being saved, like that. If you're a slave, if you're somebody's property, or if you're a slave, right? You just have to come to that realization. That's all. like that. Now, God is the one who gives you that realization. Because why? Because all realization comes from God. Because he says that right now we're under Maya, we're in illusion. So he says in the Bhagavad Gita, from me comes knowledge, all knowledge, all knowledge, all remembrance, and all forgetfulness too. So if he wants, God can make us forget. He can make us forget for millions of lifetimes. He can make us not realize these things. But he wants us to realize, so he takes an excuse to make us realize. So he does, but that the same thing that forgetfulness comes from him, that remembrance also comes from him, that knowledge also comes from him. That's stated in the Gita. So that's the point. So once we understand that point, he takes over. But we say he takes over, but he's always in charge. So we preach to people in the beginning, if you surrender to God, then he will take over and he will save you, like that. But he's already in charge. I'm already the owner of this cell phone. I don't need to establish my ownership of the cell phone, right? If the cell phone thinks it's not my property, then maybe I have to establish my ownership of it. Put my brand on it, put my name on it, like that. What do we do at Pancha Samskara? We get branded with the symbols of Vishnu on our bodies. We are the property of the Lord, just like the cowboys. They get the cattle and they put a brand on the cattle, and then when the cattle goes to some other place, some other rancher's farm, and we see the bar T on there, we know it belongs to that person, like that. So we take the symbols of the Lord on ourselves, like that. We become part of the herd of the Lord. We are the property of the Lord. Now, we're always the property of the Lord, whether we're branded or we're not branded. It's just an external symbol, right? Doesn't, just because we brand the bodies with the symbols of Vishnu, right? If I put a tag, if I, make a little tag and I put a sticker and I put it on my cell phone saying property of Keshava, right? Like that. Yeah, then somebody who finds my cell phone will say, okay, this is property of this guy and this is the phone number. I'll get it back to him, right? But even without that name on the phone, it's still my phone. It's still my phone, and there's still a way of finding me and giving it back to me, right? So surrender or property is a way of, again, recognizing the Lord, recognizing that you're his property, right? The Lord always recognizes that you're his property, but you have to recognize it also, like that. Now, he can make you recognize it. Like in the case here, it's said about Nam Alwar. There is no reason why Nam Alwar should have been taken to liberation, right? Nam Alwar is the most famous person to go to liberation, right? So sometimes we hear about, in Sri Vaishnavism, we hear about the examples of Gajendra, the example of Vibhishana, the example of Draupadi. These are very famous forms of Sharanagati, of surrender. Draupadi surrendered to Lord Krishna. Even though Krishna was far away in Dwarka, she was being disrobed, and she called out for Lord Krishna. When she gave up trying to save herself, then Krishna came and provided a length of sari for her unlimitedly and saved her, right? So that was self-initiated. She surrendered to Krishna. Vibhishana was the brother of Ravana. He went to Rama. He realized he was on the wrong side. He went to Rama. He surrendered to Rama. That was self-initiated by him. Rama didn't initiate that. Gajendra was an elephant who was being bitten on the leg by a crocodile. And at the time of his death, he thought, with my last breath, I can simply surrender to the Lord. And therefore he with his trunk, he picked a lotus flower and offered it to the Lord with a prayer that at least for my dying breath, I will serve you, O Lord, like that. So these are all self-initiated surrenders. But what about the surrender of Nam Alwar? Do we ever hear that Nam Alwar did anything like this? Nam Alwar was just liberated. When we see the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, when we go there, the most famous prapana, the most famous refugee at the feet of the Lord is Nam Alwar, right? The head of the Alwars. We go to, on the last day of the Vaikuntha Ekadasi festival, there's 21 days of festival. At the last day, Nam Alwar is brought and he's placed at the feet of the Lord and attains liberation. The Lord wants that to happen. The Lord makes that happen. There's nothing that Namawar does to make that happen. Namawar is liberated by the Lord. It's an example here, which is given here in Mumuksupadi of, what is it called? Paragata Swikara. The Lord's initiated salvation, rather than the Swagata Swikara, the self-initiated salvation. So we've been preaching up to this point. We've been preaching to people self-initiated salvation, right? And that's what Vedanta Deshika does. He preaches self-initiated salvation. Surrender unto me, right? Krishna says, surrender unto me. So you get the idea, because Krishna says to do it, that you have a choice, right? Krishna says to Arjuna, Sarvadama Pritita Mamikam, do this, surrender unto me, do it now, right? Like I went to the temple and they said, now surrender. They're telling me to surrender. Krishna's telling you to surrender. So surrender is the way, and I should surrender. But what if I don't surrender? The point is that God makes you surrender. Even when you surrender and you think you're the one who's surrendering, God is working through you, and it's actually him who's making you surrender. If you know, however much you think it's your choice and it's your action, that is how much ego you have. However much you think it is his action, that's how much you have given up that ego. So that's the point. It's very subtle. The Tengalaya Acharyas are saying that just like we talked about property being different from the other, property or Sharanagati being different from the other yogas, being different from Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, paths of great effort. Property is a path, according to Vedanta Deshika, it's a path of very little effort. According to the Tengalaya Acharyas, it's not a path of effort at all. It is not an effort at all. That surrender is not an effort. It's simply a realization. It's a realization of fact. So that's the point. It's a subtle distinction. Don't get too hung up about this point here like that. It's a very slight distinction. Practically, there's no difference between the way the Tengalais and the Vadagalais act. They don't act like other Vaishnavas. Other Vaishnavas act as though our efforts our hard efforts are the things which are going to help us gain the grace of God. By our efforts, by our chanting, by our sacrifice, by our puja, by our sadhanas, over a long period of time, and our remembrance of the Lord at the time of death, by us doing all of those things, and by that alone, we will be saved by God. Even then, they're humble. Even then, they're a little bit humble, and they say, those efforts are nothing compared to the effort of God to save us. So we do a little bit, and he does a lot. As in the case of the mother monkey and the baby monkey. The baby monkey does an effort, but it's a small effort. So most Vaishnavas feel that. They feel that there's a small effort that has to be done, that there are some works that have to be done, and faith alone is not the way. The Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas reject that. The Protestant Christians reject that, and they say, no, by faith alone and not by works at all are we saved. Right? I can find that quotation from the Bible if you like. Okay, so for instance, this is Lord Krishna says, give up, Sarvadharma Pritijaya, this verse, give up all religious paths of self-effort and seek self-effort. Give up all religious paths of self-effort, even if you think property is a path of self-effort. If you think that I have to make the effort to actually surrender, you have to give that up also. Give up all religious paths of self-effort is what Sarvadharma Pritijaya means. And seek refuge in me alone. I will deliver you from all sins and their reactions and bestow salvation on you, grieve not. That is the meaning that's the more definitive meaning of the Charmasloka of Lord Krishna, right? Now, it reminds us of the Christian doctrine of causeless or irresistible grace, which is emphasized by the Protestant Christians. And they say here from Ephesians 2:8-9, for by grace you are saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not works, lest anyone should boast, right? So lest anybody should have the false ego to think that one is saved by one's own efforts in any way, shape, or form. however small it may be, that effort, right? If you think that, you are boastful, you have false ego, you have ahankara, right? So for by grace you are saved. By grace, by pure, causeless, irresistible grace, you are saved, right? Through faith. And that not of yourselves, right? It is the gift of God. It is him working, not of works, lest anyone should boast. That is what's stated in the Bible. Okay, so therefore we have that dichotomy between the Catholics and the Protestants in Christianity, that the Catholics say it is through faith and works that one attains God. That is called cooperative grace. We attain the grace of God through cooperation. Like the baby monkey cooperates with the mother and hangs on to the mother. Whereas the Protestants say, no, it is by causeless grace. It is by irresistible grace that we are saved, right? The irresistible grace, the example is the mother cat comes along and picks up the kitten and saves it. The kitten does nothing. The kitten can even struggle against the mother, but the mother will save the kitten no matter what the kitten thinks, no matter whether the kitten wants to be saved or doesn't want to be saved. The mother cat will just pick it up in its mouth and take it, save it, even if it struggles. So even if we struggle here in this material world, even if we don't want to surrender to God, even if we don't want liberation, even if we want to do all sorts of, we want to continue on for millennium and unlimited lifetimes, turning away from God and doing sinful things, we are his property. We are his slave. We are meant to serve him, and he takes the initiative to save us because he enjoys saving us. He enjoys the sins of the world. That is why the world is called Leela Vibhuti, the place of Leela. So this is a Leela. This is our Leela. And this is his Leela. He is working through us to save us, and he enjoys doing that. So, and just like I explained the story of the prodigal son, he feels so much pleasure. The father feels so much pleasure. The parents feel so much pleasure when the bad son, the disobedient son, comes home, that they throw a big party and everything like that. Whereas the sons that were always following the father, the obedient servants, the obedient slaves, the property of the Lord that never gets lost, right? That's the Nityasuris, the Nityasiddhas, those who are always there in his attendance in Vaikuntha. He feels more pleasure saving the souls in the world. But why go through this whole song and dance? God actually enjoys this. He enjoys this Leela. He enjoys saving the souls. He says, why does he come to this world? Why does he send Vaishnavas to this world? Why does he come and speak the Shastras, the scriptures? He enjoys this, doing this. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's also said, right? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanataya. I sambhavami yuge yuge. I advent myself millennium after millennium, or I send my Vaishnava devotees to do this, right? To protect the devotees, to annihilate the miscreants, right? And to establish the codes of religion. These are the codes of religion also, right? These books, these explanations of the Sri Vaishnavas about property. This is the codes of religion also. So Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga are also mentioned there, right? Those are for people with ego. Those are for people who think that they can do something, right? If you feel like that, if you feel that you have to do that, it has to be self-initiated, then follow one of those paths. Follow Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, follow Bhakti Yoga, or even follow property, but think that you're the one who's initiating it all. That's fine. You can do that. You'll be successful because God will take the initiative. God is actually taking the initiative, and he is actually working through you, and he'll save you. So we shouldn't be afraid that the Vaishnavas who are doing these different paths, or even Vaishnavas who are doing property, but they feel that yeah, I'm the one who's self-initiated. They'll be successful. But the Tengalaya Acharyas here are pointing out the example of Bharata. Bharata surrendered to Rama. Shouldn't he be successful? Shouldn't he have been successful in his surrender? But he wasn't successful. So they just give an example of how a person can surrender to God So after preaching to people that your surrender is going to be 100% certain, if you surrender to God, you're going to be saved. Here we have an example of Tengelai's giving of a person who surrendered to God. Bharata surrendered to Rama. And his surrender was, please, Rama, please come back to rule the kingdom. And Rama didn't come. The Lord's independence overruled that. And that's what the Tengalai Acharyas are emphasizing, that the Lord is completely all-powerful and independent. The Lord's supreme independence trumps your minute independence. So you have a minute independence, but he has all-pervading, all-encompassing, all-powerful independence. And his quality overrules your little quality. So yeah, you're made in the image of God and you have minute independence. And you can quote the scripture to that, and Vedanta Dashika does quote the scripture to that. But the Lord's qualities overrule that. And that's the point of the Tengalais. So both are correct, right, in a sense. But there's an emphasis in the Tengalais on the Lord's qualities, because the Lord is the one who actually saves us. And Vedanta Deshika wants to preserve the Vedantic points that the soul is a doer, is a minute doer, and has minute independence. He wants to preserve that, right? He says what you're saying, Tengalais, is hyperbole. You're too much emphasis on the qualities of the Lord. And what the Tengalais are saying is, no, actually, what we're trying to say is that we're just like a piece of we're just like an object. We're like a complete slave, a complete object of the Lord. We belong to the Lord, and therefore there's no effort involved in property. Property is not an effort, right? It's simply a realization, and that it's all carried out by the Lord anyway. The Wadagais in everything that they do, every action that they do that big long meditation in the beginning and the end of doing any action, right? Called Satyakatyaga, right? Because they have to constantly remind themselves that they're not in charge, that their little ego, that they don't have that minute independence. They have to constantly remind themselves of that. The Tengalais don't do that because they know that. That's what they preach. That's Tengalai philosophy. So both Sri Vaishnavas, both sets of Sri Vaishnavas are doing the thing with the realization that God is working through us, and that we're just an instrument, like a cell phone in his hands. We're just his property, his servant, his slave, right? His 100% servant, his 100% slave, his property, like his inanimate property. We're like that. Everybody thinks like that. But because of Vedanta Deshika's emphasis of the minute independence of the soul, therefore the Wadagalais constantly have to remind themselves of that, because Vedanta Deshika is not emphasizing that. He's not emphasizing God worship. Whereas the Tengalais, because Pilakacharya and Manavala Muni are emphasizing God's role as being completely in control of everything. Therefore, we don't have to constantly say he's working through us. We know that because that's what it says in Mumuksupadi. That's what it says in Srivatana Bhushanam in Acharya Hridam. So in that way, they're very, very close, because practically they're both thinking like that. So, okay. So we've gone quite long here. I would like to finish with Mom. So I'm just going to continue on. I tried to this particular point, because it's a very small point of distinction between Wadagalais and Tengalais, Northern and Southern School. It takes a lot of explanation, and perhaps even it needs more explanation than what I've given. I don't feel qualified to fully explain it, but the commentary here has explained it. I've given some understanding of it. It remains for us to think about this point more and more. And I can see good points on both sides. So therefore, I'm not saying you can't read Rahasi Trayasara, you can't accept that the soul has minute independence, like that. I'm just saying the emphasis here by the Tengalais is not on that. Is on the supremacy of the Lord, the independence of the Lord, the autonomy of the Lord, the absolute power of the Lord, and the. So anyway, so we had 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth point here is me or mom, the one who accepts with relish the faults of you, whose mind is confused about right and wrong action, dharma adharma dikulan, right, with misplaced affection and pity, which is what Arjuna was feeling, right? For this reason, right, you need not fear that I will scorn you upon seeing your faults, right? So this is bringing us to Masuchaha at the end of the Charma Sloka. The last two words are Masuchaha. Don't grieve. Don't worry about it, right? So don't worry that I might see your faults from all these sins that you performed in unlimited lives. So the fifth point, me means the refuge of all who are without protection. Asharanya, Sharanya. Sharanya means the refuge of Asharanya, of the people who have no refuge, right? The refuge of those who have no protection, shelter, right? So I am a refuge such that you and others who lack support can take shelter. That's pretty straightforward, right? So the explanation of that is water's nature is to be cool, right? But it just might happen to heat up on its own, right? Of course, through the action of the sun or whatever, like that. Similarly, the one who is the mediator or Purushakara, right? Meaning Mahalakshmi. Mahalakshmi is the mediator between us and the Lord. She's the consort of the Lord. She's the mother of the souls. She is the mother in the family. So if we think of the Lord like the husband and father, Mahalakshmi is like the wife or the mother, and the souls are like the children. So the children are always afraid of the father. They approach through the mother. And we know from Sharanagati Gajam that the first part is to surrender to Mahalakshmi. It's called Sri Prapati. First part of Sharanagati Gajam, where the souls, right, make sure by approaching the mother, Mahalakshmi, and not approaching the father directly, but first of all approaching the mother, that their plea to the father for protection will be accepted 100% because the mother recommends it. So she's the mediator, which joins the souls to the Lord. She is able to influence the Lord as the wife and influence the souls as the mother, right? So we've discussed this before. Okay, so and allows for the forgiveness of the sins, right? Because if we go directly to the Lord, He may not forgive our sins. Just may find fault and try to separate the soul and the Lord, right? But as Periyalwar, the father of Andal, right, said, even if the lotus lady herself, meaning Mahalakshmi, proclaims the soul sins, right? This is a statement by Periyalwar. Let's say Lakshmi is never going to do this. Lakshmi is never going to go to the Lord and say, look at the soul sins, right? Even if the lotus lady herself proclaims the soul sins, I, the Lord, will be unable to leave the Chaitana, the soul, and will refute any fault, saying, my devotees would never do that. So even if this is very interesting, right? Even if Mahalakshmi herself were to say to the Lord, look at all the sins of the souls, don't forgive them, right? Still, the Lord would say, well, actually my devotees would never do that. And this is a quotation from Periyalwar Tirumoli 492. And we can look this up in Nalini Divyaprabandha. In fact, we should probably look it up. It's an interesting point of philosophy, right? So this mom here means me, the one who will side with the soul, in this way and protect him, right? So here's an extreme situation that is being told here, an extreme situation of which would never happen, that Mahalakshmi would say, look at these sinful souls, you have to punish them to the Lord. And he will say, according to Periyalwar's statement, he will say, my devotees would never do that, do those things like that. So we have these, again, we have these 6 points. Mom, me, the one who is the savior of all, your menial servant, awaiting your acceptance, accepting your sins with relish, your refuge, right? Your refuge, right? The refuge of those who have no refuge, right? And the one who protects refusing to leave, even if, like naturally cool water, spontaneously heating up, right? The one who unites Lakshmi wants to separate us, right? Even if Lakshmi herself wanted to separate the souls from God and say, look, God, they've sinned, punish them, still, right? Which is the example given is like water, which is naturally cool, sometimes just gets warm because of being out in the sun or being in some natural position where it attains heat, right? So there's a possibility there, however remote. It's actually impossible that Lakshmi's going to say this, but let's say she did, right? That even then the Lord wouldn't accept. He wouldn't accept our faults. He would still protect us like that. So these are the 6 meanings of the word mom, like that. So very quickly, I want to just look at Pibi and Angacharyas, and then we'll finish for today. So here again, the sutra is simply one word, mom. Mom. Right, now the meaning of mom is explained. The Lord says mom, referring to himself or me, right? Krishna says me, who is focused on protecting everyone, who can be made to do pleasing things for his devotees, who looks for approval by his devotees, who takes his devotees' sins as pleasing, right? Acts so that they don't have to be afraid, right? Who is the refuge for his devotees, who never gives up on his devotees, right? All right. Even if Periyapirati, meaning Mahalakshmi, who normally mediates between them, right, for them, right, in between the God and the souls, were to point out their sins and asks that they be rejected, and stands alone and protects them, even if Lakshmi were to, which she never will, right, even if she were to point out the sins of the soul, still the Lord would protect us. So that is the last meaning of mom given. Since he who has taken the avatar in this world and is present in the form that is visible to everyone, Vibhava, as I mentioned, he says why he comes. He comes to protect the devotees, to annihilate the miscreants, and establish religion, dharma, right? Referred to himself as mom, it rejects his para and viewer forms, which are not visible, being remote in space, and his antaryami form, which is inside the heart of every living being, right? Being inside the Devata, also like Yagni and Indra, and being worshipped by those using other means. So these other aspects, right, are difficult to approach, right? That will come to in the next 2 sutras, but we're going to cover it here because he's lumped those 3 together, right? It also shows the difference of this form from them, right? So that it shows the difference in the approachability of the different types of forms. So when Krishna says, "Ma ekam sharanam vraja," when he says "Mom," me, what he's talking about is the approach to the Lord, and the approach to the Lord is easiest in the deity form, in the Archa Vigraha, or possibly when the Lord comes as a different avatar, but you have to be around at that time when that avatar comes. There's also an analogy about different forms of water, different sources of water. The water that's in the clouds is unattainable. If we're thirsty and we want to get water, the clouds are floating above us. We can't get the water of the clouds to quench our thirst, right? So we can that's the example given of the para and vyuha forms of the Lord in Vaikuntha and the Lord Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Those expansions of the Lord are unavailable to us like water in the clouds. We have water in a well. We have to dig the well. We have to make big efforts to get the water out of the well. If we want to quench our thirst, if somebody says, go dig a well, that takes a lot of effort. That is like the Lord in the heart, the antaryami. So the yogis spend years and years meditating, and they understand the Lord in the heart. They become satisfied by meditating on the Lord in the heart only after much effort, just the same way as a person who digs a well eventually gets water and can quench his thirst. If we want to quench our thirst immediately, water in the palm of our hand can be taken, or in a glass, immediately can be taken. That is like the deity in the temple or in the house shrine, like that, the iconic form of the Lord, the Archa Vigraha. So there are 5 forms mentioned in Pancharatra, the Para, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryami, and Archa. The last one is Archa, the most accessible form of the Lord. And that is the point also being made here about the word mom. What does mom actually mean in practice? It means the deity form of the Lord, who we can see, we can worship, we can offer, we can surrender to every day, like that, very easily. Okay, so with this, that's going to be brought up in the next couple of sutras. Okay, so that was just brought up by Divyanandacharya because he lumped those three sutras together. We have finished that. We have not finished talking about Mam, but we have finished talking about the first sutra of Mam, which is just Mam by itself. There are two more sutras on this topic, which we will cover next time. So, are there any further questions or comments about this? It's a very complex topic because it goes into, we didn't think such a small word could have so many meanings, right? But it does, and the shade of meaning that is taken between the Wadagalais and Tengalais exactly about the word Mam, right, is highlighted here. Later, we can go and look in Rahasya Trayasara, we can see the arguments that Vedanta Deshika has. But these are the arguments of the Southern School Acharyas, Pilalokacharya and Manavala Mamani. He has his arguments too, which emphasize the minute independence of the soul and the doership of the soul. These arguments are emphasizing the Lord. And why do we feel that those are better arguments than the other arguments? We feel that are better arguments because ultimately, what is property, what does moksha depend upon? It depends actually upon the Lord, and it doesn't depend upon us. So if you in some way say that liberation depends upon some effort by us, right, then you have to emphasize that small independence of the soul. If you say that no, it doesn't depend on us at all, giving the example of Nam Alwar, who didn't do anything, was simply liberated, right? Or Guhadev, or Guhadev the hunter, or Hanuman in the Ramayana, they were also given, right? So if you say like that, if you emphasize the Lord is the doer, he's the primary cause of liberation, right? Not even property, not even the process of property. The Lord himself is the giver of liberation. So if you emphasize that, then you side with the Tengalaya Acharyas like that. But there's no, we don't have to pick sides. Everybody follows Ramanuja. Everybody's accepting property like that. These are very small philosophical points, which are not theological points, actually, which are not. In general, they're not really relevant to our normal mentality or our practice, day-to-day practice, like that. But they're interesting, and when we study the books, we go into depth, and so we've gone very, very deep into this. So feel free to accept one or the other, or neither, like that. It doesn't really make any difference because the process is the same. The process is the same. So I don't think there should be any big disagreement about it. So any questions or any comments about these 6 aspects of the word mam or me in Sanskrit in context of the Charma Sloka?
I didn't realize it has so many meanings. It's very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, Vedanta Deshika has also written Rahasya Granthas. He's also written Rahasya Trayasaram. Like I said, also we have Pilalokacharya. We can read about this in Mumuksupadi and Srivachana Bhushana in Acharya Hridayam, right, by Alagiya Manavala Perumal Nayana, his brother, right, and also we have also reading about it. We can also read about it from in Vedanta Deshika's works too. And there are 18 books by Pilalokacharya, and there are many books by Vedanta Deshika also. We're studying with Dr. Turin Ryan now on Saturdays and Sundays. We're studying Sampradaya Parishuddhi, which is the first of his Chilarai Rahasyangal, which are his minor rahasyas, his minor books. And once we get finished with Vedanta Deshika's minor books on these things, right, then because he's gives some minor books on it, and then then his major book is Rahasya Trayasaram. We've also seen here in Mumuksupadi that sometimes Pilalokacharya will refer to some other books like Achiradi Marga. He has a He has a book called Achyadi Marga, which talks about the journey of the soul to Vaikuntha after death. He has another Parantapa. There's a lot of other books that are there which elucidate these commentaries. But the Mumuksupadi is a main text. Is the main text, and so we're going through that. And once we finish Mumuksupadi, maybe we can look. We're also studying Tattvatrayam, which is another one of his Rahasya Granthas, which is more basic. We're doing that on Tuesdays. But so hopefully we get through all of the esoteric books by each one of them. I really want to go through these books by Vedanta Deshika called there's one Abhaya Purana Saram, which is all about the explanation of the Ram Charma Sloka. Now we're talking about Krishna Charma Sloka. Let's talk also about Ram Charma Sloka. And then we have also the Vraha Charma Sloka, which comes in another book called something Shikamani, I forget. But anyway, we started that. I started that one with him, and I got one class from that. But we'll go back to that, and we'll finish that one as well. So we need to, study each one of these mantras. So not just the Tira mantra, Dwaya mantra, and Krishna Charma Sloka, but these other mantras, the Rama Charma Sloka and Vraha Charma Sloka, are also spoken about, and they also help us to understand Krishna Charma Sloka and the other mantras as well. That's the whole point in most of the Rahasya Granthas of both Deshika and Pilalokacharya, is that the Omkara is expanded into the Tira mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. More explanation is given. Right, and then the Dwaya mantra is an explanation of an expounding or elaboration, let's say, of the Tira mantra, and then the Charma Sloka of Krishna is an elaboration of the Dwaya mantra, and these other ones, these other Rama Charma Slokas and Vraha Charma Slokas helps us to understand also Krishna Charma Sloka. So all of these are expansions and elaborations, and in fact, the whole Nalaya Divya Prabandham is an expansion of understanding this process of property and etc. So after this, we have the different commentaries on the Tiruvai Moli of Nam Alwar, right? And as Dr. Alwar was saying, that's the next thing we have to study is for Bhagavad Vishayam. Bhagavad Vishayam is an explanation of these things in greater detail. So while it's a way of kalakshepam, of killing time, until liberation comes at the time of death, that we continue to expand our knowledge of these things by going through the commentaries of all the acharyas. Tiruvai Moli, the commentaries on that, the esoteric commentaries on that, was started off. They're all there's 1,102, I believe, verses by Pasarams by Nam Alwar and Tiruvai Moli. So those 1,000 verses get expanded to, in the commentary, the first commentary is 6,000, then 12,000, then 24,000, 36,000. There are 36,000 stanzas in the most famous commentary, 36,000 verses in the most famous commentary on Nam Alwar's 1,000. And that is called the 36,000, but more commonly it's called the Idu. And that is the most that's the most famous of the 5 commentaries on the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. We don't even know the Mula. We don't even know the text of the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. We don't even know the meaning of the text, what to speak of the commentaries. So we are far away from understanding this subject in full. We're just like little babies. So we need to continue, of course, death can come at any time. So, obviously there's so many things we could study, but it's very great. It's great and it's interesting and it's so absorbing to be able to go into so much depth on these subjects. And so luckily we have people like Dr. O and Dr. Tirunarayana who can help us to understand these subtle points of philosophy and theology in depth. So we should take advantage of that,
Great, thank you, Swami. It was very nice to do that.
Yeah. So next time we'll continue. We're going to continue on with our understanding of the word mom, the Krishna Chanama Sloka, Bhagavad Gita 1866.
Namaskar.
Namaskaram,
Yes.
Swami. I just want to
What
ask
about
you
this one?
something.
Sure.
Yeah, don't want to keep back anyone, but it's just further to Premananda Swami's question about maturity in spiritual life. And of course, you have explained extensively that really there's no effort required at all, but one has to at least one needs to come to the realization, isn't it? But isn't it that one has to at least fully, at some point in life, give up mamakara and ahankara fully in order to realize what you're saying, that one realizes that we belong to God and we're the property of God? So isn't that linked to that there's some spiritual maturity at that point when you give up fully ahankara, mamakara? Because isn't that only then you will understand that the Lord alone is the means as well as the goal?
Okay,
the spiritual maturity, like the grace of Lord working through you, which unveils the fact that you actually surrender.
Yeah. So, okay,
Yeah.
so it depends what we mean by fully give up ahankara and mamakara. Fully give up the ego. I can conceive of an idea of fully giving up the ego, which doesn't actually occur until death, right? As long as we live in this material world, we have a physical body, gross stula sharira, and we have a shukshma sharira. We have the mental body associated with the soul. As long as we have those two bodies associated with the soul, how can we say we've fully given up everything, all these ideas? This is why in Sri Vaishnavism, Jivan Mukti is not accepted. Videha Mukti. Deha means the body. Videha means without the body. Mukti or liberation is understood to be without the body, bodiless liberation. Other forms of Vaishnavism, like Gaudiya Vaishnavism, even Shankaracharya is the one who propounds this idea of Jivan Mukta, that somebody somehow or other is encased in this body of gross and subtle illusion, right? It's gross and subtle illusion that he's in. He's associating with the body, and he's thinking the body is the self. He's thinking the mind is the self. He's thinking that he belongs to himself. He's thinking I am something, right? I own something, my own soul, like that. As long as we think like that, I mean, I can hardly conceive. I can hardly conceive of completely giving up the ego, I and mine. I can hardly, while being in the body, like that. If it's possible, maybe it's possible, but Ramanuja says no, that liberation comes. I mean, once, what does it say? Again, we can emphasize this point. There's the Jnanat Mokshaha. From knowledge comes liberation. So true knowledge or full knowledge only comes when we get rid of all of the coverings to the soul. And what are the coverings to the soul? The coverings to the soul of the gross and subtle body. So that comes only after death. So, I don't want to get into a big argument, about whether people, of course, it's possible for nityas, for eternally liberated personalities, to descend to this world, and they're of course not covered by any form of Maya, right? So in that sense, we can accept that there might be persons that living in this world who are from the spiritual world, who are eternal, who are perhaps not in Maya. But there's also examples of persons who descended who were covered by Maya, like or seem to be covered by Maya. Okay, when we see a play, let's say we go to Shakespeare play, we go to a play, and we go to the play, that there's a person playing Hamlet, there's a person playing the other. There are different roles that are being taken up by different people. The actors, however, never the actor who's playing Hamlet, when he goes off stage at the end of the night, he doesn't remain in character. He doesn't think that I am Hamlet, right? He doesn't walk out and say, hey, I'm the Prince of Denmark. No, he knows that he's not the Prince of Denmark. He even knows that when he's on stage. So like that. So it's very difficult for us to know that we're not the Prince of Denmark while we're on the stage in this material world. We are covered by the illusion. We think that we are the Prince of Denmark. We're not. We're not Hamlet. Okay. once we leave this body, when we leave the stage, it's very easy for us to know because we won't be in costume anymore. We won't be covered by that illusion. Everybody won't be telling us that we're the Prince of Denmark, right? And we won't be acting like the Prince of Denmark when we leave this body. But it is possible. Is it possible for us to know? Yes, there are the persons who come from the spiritual world. Like, well, of course, when God comes, he's not covered by any illusion. He's in complete knowledge. And we have complete knowledge also in liberation once we leave the stage. But most of the souls here are under some form of illusion. Their knowledge is contracted. Their knowledge is covered by some form of illusion, and therefore they can't understand that they're not the character that they're playing on stage in this play. This is Leela Vibhuti. We are on stage in the play. This is what's going on here, right? It's a real situation in the sense that it's a real play. But the scenery has changed. I changed the scenery here, like that because I'm in charge of the thing. So I changed the scenery to look like that. This is an illusion. Just as this material world, in a sense, is an illusion. It's a real illusion because we really are playing in this illusion. We're, just like when we go to a play, nobody says this play is an illusion. This play is not an illusion. The play that we go see is a play, like that. The characters are people, real people, but they're acting in different roles. So we're acting in this material world in that role. When we completely know that we are not the characters that we play in this material world, when we completely know that, then we're liberated, like that. But still, we're on stage in the costume, acting like the Prince of Denmark, like that. Ramanuja says real liberation only comes when you exit stage right. Only when you leave the stage, take off the costume, take off the makeup, stop acting like the Prince of Denmark, that's when you're liberated. Whereas others say, yeah, you're on stage, you got the makeup on, you got the clothes on, and you're acting like the Prince of Denmark, but still in your mind, you know that you're not. That Ramanuja doesn't call fully liberated. Okay, so again, it might be a little bit of semantics here. I promised somebody that I have an anthology of different scholars writing different articles about different religions and different sects of Hinduism also, and what they believe, whether they believe in Jivan Mukta or whether they don't believe in Jivan Mukti. And it's a very interesting discussion. I will scan that and I will make that available to everybody. So it's including the person who did the translation of Sri Vachana Bhushan and Mumuksupadi, this Patricia Mummy. She had, I think she has an article in there, or at least she may be the editor-in-chief of this volume. But it's basically an anthology where a bunch of scholars got together and said from our research in these different groups, these different philosophies and religions, we want to show what they believe, how they believe about what they believe about Jivan Mukti and what they don't. So this is the point. Getting back to your question, is that can we say that a person who is in ignorance in this material world, what does that mean, ignorance? The person is covered by the reaction to his karmas. This body and this mind is made up of the reaction to unlimited sins and pious activities that we've done in previous births. That creates the body. So as long as we have this body, we're covered by that thing. Now, if somehow or other our consciousness means beyond the sensual consciousness of the indriyas of the body and beyond the mind, the material mind, if you can get beyond that, beyond material sense perception and beyond the mental sense perception, the mind, the ego, and intelligence and ego, the mind, intelligence, and ego. If you can get beyond that point and not be thinking about or not be attached in any way to those things, the bhumiya, apo, naro, vayu, kamanu, buddha, evacha, ahankara, right? All those 8. If you can completely separate yourself, as Krishna says, he's separated from them. He says, Bina prakriti asura, I'm separated from those things. But if you can be completely separated from those things and still somehow be in this material world, okay, then that's Jivan Mukta. Ramanuja says that's not a thing, according to Ramanuja. He doesn't believe in that. He doesn't think that that's possible like that. So, maybe it's possible, maybe it's not possible. Like I said, if we take the analogy of the stage, it's possible that a person might, okay, so here's what's happening, right? It's like the play Hamlet. It's like a stage, right? And you wake up in the middle of a scene. You're Hamlet and you were asleep, and you wake up in the middle of a scene. You're dressed like Hamlet. You've got the makeup on, and you think in your mind, I'm Hamlet. I'm the Prince of Denmark. And you see what's going on. You're going to act like the Prince of Denmark if you think like that, right? Now, if you were off stage and you put on your makeup, put on your costume, read your script and everything, and went out on the stage, then you know very well that you're only an actor. But when you wake up in the middle of a dream, in the middle of an illusion, and you look in the mirror and you see the Prince of Denmark, then you think, yeah, I'm the Prince of Denmark. So this is what's happened to us. We're born into this material world. We're born into the consciousness that we are the Prince of Denmark, right? And that we have to act in a certain way, right? And we never get beyond that point. We don't get beyond that point until we shed the material body, which is the thing that makes us think that we are the Prince of Denmark. Until we reach Vaikuntha, we never shed that. That's why we take bath in the Viraja River. Is the analogy that we give to washing off the subtle body. The gross body, of course, goes. It's burned or buried or whatever after the soul leaves the body. But the subtle body continues along with the soul, right? Until everything is completely left behind, and then only we can attain real liberation in Vaikuntha. The eternal service of the Lord, direct service of the Lord. If you say that can happen here, then it means that person who says that he's a Jiva Mukta here must act in such a way that he doesn't acknowledge that he has a mind, intelligence, an ego, or a physical body. Do you know such a person? Have you ever read about such a person that acts in this world in such a way that he doesn't? If you know that your mind, your body, your ego, and everything, your intelligence is not real. If you think that that's not real, that that's not part of you, and that's not connected to you, then why would you act in that way? Why would you be acting in this material world? Why would you eat? Why would you drink? Why would you breathe? Why would you think? Why would you act in any way? Once you understand that, so it's inconceivable to Ramanuja that a person would still be in this body. The person will be liberated. The person will be dead. He'll be gone. If he actually 100% understood his position, he would be in that position, that real position, and not the fake position of being the Prince of Denmark here in this play. So it's an argument. It's a discussion about Jivan Mukti. I'm not saying that other Vaishnavas and other religionists who say that Jivan Mukti is a thing, have no good points. They may have some good points. If we really want to go into this in depth, I suggest that we read these articles about the different understandings of Madhvacharya, the Sri Vaishnavas, the other different. The Buddhists also have some idea of a liberated person. So everybody has different ideas. Madhvas don't believe in Jivan Mukta either, by the way. They believe in something else, which maybe you could argue is Jivan Mukta, but they don't believe in it. So Gaudiyas believe in Jivan Mukti. In this, they follow Shankara. Shankara also believes in it. They believe in a slightly different way, of course. Madhva doesn't believe in it. Sri Vaishnavas don't believe in it, but they have other ideas. Okay, so we can discuss it. You may come to the conclusion after you study all these different ideas that you make a conclusion that they're just different ways of saying the same thing. That's why I'm giving the analogy of the play. But it's an interesting, very interesting point, this Jivan Mukta, and I want to understand it more, and so therefore let's do that. Let's do that. I will scan it and I will put it there, and then we'll understand. We'll understand. So whether one has to have spiritual maturity or not, did Draupadi have spiritual maturity? Did Gajendra, the elephant, have spiritual maturity? Did Vibhishana, who was a Rakshasa, did he have spiritual maturity? Still they surrendered like that. You have to, there's also this argument is there in Christianity also, okay? For instance, the form of surrender in Christianity, the external thing, in Vaishnavism is you take initiation, right? That's the external formality of surrender. In Christianity, it's the baptism. The baptism, they baptize the baby. So you have people who believe in baptizing babies, and people who don't believe in baptizing babies. They only believe in baptizing adults. So they say, okay, you grow up first, you go to Sunday school, you read the Bible, you understand that Jesus is the Lord, or God is the Lord, and Jesus is the way to the Lord, whatever exactly they believe, whatever sect of Christianity they belong to. And once you actually understand that, you come to a mental agreement with that, then and only then can you actually surrender to the Lord and become an actual part of the church by the baptism, by the formal external baptism, right? So they say you have to, the baby doesn't know anything. The baby's just there and doesn't know anything about Christianity, but it just gets, a little cross drawn on its head with holy water. So, and somehow or other it's entered into the church. It's become a member of the church. It didn't consent to being a member of the church. It's the parents who want the baby to be baptized, right? So this is the same question you're asking here. Do you need a certain amount of spiritual maturity to surrender to God? I was explaining in this class about how the point being made here is that God makes you surrender. God is actually the person who's making you surrender anyway, like that. So if we say that we need spiritual maturity in order to surrender, is that not a qualification? Have we not said that there is no qualification for property? Have we not said that property is actually, the process of property is performed by the Lord? The Lord himself does the property. He is the means. The Lord is the means. What we're saying by we're asking this question, we're asking, isn't spiritual maturity the means to surrender? The means of liberation. What this question says is that without spiritual maturity, one can't surrender, and then one can't get moksha. So one has to be qualified. One has to have spiritual maturity. I don't agree at all. That's not the philosophy of property. The philosophy of property is the primary means of property is the Lord himself, and not the spiritual maturity of the person. Not even the surrender of the action of surrender of the person, because surrender is not an action. It's a realization that one is a servant or a slave or a piece of property of the Lord. Now, even if that realization isn't there, as in the case given today of Namalwar, who didn't do anything, who didn't think anything, but was saved by the Lord. So the Lord's supremacy can overrule all of that. Right. Now that may be very rare. Okay, so we say, okay, I'm not Namalwar, so shouldn't I, therefore, I should cultivate spiritual maturity? Yes, you should. Everybody should. Everybody should cultivate spiritual maturity. We're not against cultivating spiritual maturity. Is it an absolute prerequisite to be saved? No. So we're not against spiritual maturity. We're not against forms of bhakti. We're not against doing work and surrendering the fruits. So we're not against karma. We're not against jnana. We're study the scriptures. We're studying the scriptures right now, right? We're not against all these things. We're not against trying to get more spiritual maturity. So we're not against all of these things. Are any of these things the straw that breaks the camel's back? Are any of these things the absolute necessity to get to liberation? No. The only absolute necessity that we need to attain liberation is the Lord himself. The Lord himself is the one and only primary cause of moksha. Everything else, we can say spiritual maturity is a preliminary, right? Yes, it's a preliminary cause of moksha. Just as we said in Sri Vachanabhushan, we already discussed this, right? Like I said, control the mind means control the senses. The Lord then sends us an acharya. The acharya initiates us, gives us the pancha samskar, mediates between us and the Lord and Mahalakshmi, and gives us the Tira mantra, the Dvaya mantra, the Charma sloka, helps us to do the property like that. So somebody can say, controlling the mind and body, that's the cause of liberation. No, that's the initial cause. Then approaching the spiritual master, that's the cause of liberation. No, that's the initial cause. chanting the Tira mantra. People get the Tira mantra and they think, no, I got to chant it a lot. If I chant it a lot, if I think about the meaning, that's the cause of liberation. That's a primary cause. That's not a primary cause. That's again an initial cause. What is the primary cause? The primary cause is the Lord. All these other things we call initial causes. These are initial causes that bring us up to the point of understanding what we're understanding today, which is it is the Lord and the Lord only and only the Lord. That is the primary cause of liberation. That is it. That is what it is. Just like the mother cat picks up the kitten, even if you struggle, even if you're not spiritually mature, the Lord is taking an excuse to save you. He will save you. He's making an excuse to save you. Like that. And we have to have faith. Even we don't have to have faith. That is why, okay, so we have from Lakshmi Tantra also, we have this these 5 sarangas of Sharanagati, right? The sloka which gives us the definition of Sharanagati, right? So what do the Wadagalai say? They say, oh yeah, helplessness, great faith, all these sort of things, all these different things, these 5 things are prerequisites to Sharanagati. These are angas of Sharanagati. These are limbs of Sharanagati. These are prerequisites. We say, the Tengalai say, no, these are not prerequisites. These things may or may not come out of your surrender to God. The surrender that we do to God, or that God does through us to himself, right? He makes us surrender unto him, right? So may or may not result in this lifetime of us having these feelings in full, right? Or these qualities in full, right? But they are certainly not prerequisites. We would call them post-requisites, that through the surrender to God, these things start manifesting in the life of the Prapana, like that. The Wadagalai say, no, these are prerequisites without these things. So this is definitely a Wadagalai question, right? Do you need something in order to surrender, in order to attain liberation? No, there is absolutely no qualification. There is no qualification. This cell phone has no qualification to become my property. It is already my property. It is always my property. It will never be anybody else's property but mine, right? Therefore, the soul is already the property of God. It will never be the property of anybody else's. No matter how illusioned you are not your own person. You are not your own soul. Your soul belongs to God. That if you think that it is your soul, then you have stolen the property of God and claimed it for yourself. But no, if you start thinking again, you have to start thinking again in the right way. But even if you don't think in the right way, it doesn't. Whether the cell phone thinks it's independent or not independent, it's not independent. It's mine. It's my cell phone. It's my property. We are God's property. That's a statement of fact. If you in illusion think that you're your own property, or you're your own master, or things associated with you in this material world are yours, that's your illusion, like that. When you get rid of that illusion, then there's liberation, like that. Do you have to actively act to get rid of that illusion? No, you don't have to act like that, because the property of the Lord is always the property of the Lord. That's the fact, like that. So that will occur at the point of liberation. All the clouds will part, and all will be revealed to you. You will have all knowledge in liberation, and you will understand that. So that will happen. So why do you have to work so hard for it here? You don't. God is looking for, just like the drowning person doesn't have to work hard to help the lifeguard save him. In fact, it's better, speaking as a former lifeguard, I will tell you, it's much better if the person just relaxes and doesn't panic and just goes limp, and then I can save him much easier, like that. So all of this striving for spiritual maturity, striving for all these things like that is from the point of view of God, it's just it's just extraneous. You don't have to do that, like that. Now, if you want to do it, if you feel like, I'm not saying that people shouldn't study the scriptures, shouldn't do works and give up the works fruit, or they shouldn't do bhakti forms of devotion, they shouldn't chant, they shouldn't do pujas, they should, do all those things if you like. And if you don't want to, if you don't have time to, if you don't do it, then it doesn't make any difference, because these are not qualifications. Simple spiritual maturity, also not qualification. not qualification. God is going to take an excuse to save you. He's going to take an excuse. So what does it mean, spiritual maturity? For spiritual maturity, we have to have some intelligence. We have to study the scriptures. We have to approach a guru. We have to, we have to get different, we have to sort of work for spiritual maturity, right? Like that. Does that mean that we have to do all those things to attain God? No, God, even the simple are going to be, what is even Jesus says that the meek will inherit the earth, so just be the Lord's property, and he'll reclaim you. He'll reclaim you like the mother cat picks up the kitten, like that. It may sound lazy. It may sound lazy to you. Oh, well, you don't have to do all these things. You can do all these things. It's not that we don't study the scriptures or do all these other things. You can do all those things. If you want to do all these things, if you want to strive for spiritual maturity, very good. That's good. It's not bad, But if you think that by my striving, if you're attached to your own striving and you think I'm striving, I'm doing this, I'm becoming spiritually mature, who's giving that realization to you? As I said in the Gita, the knowledge, the spiritual maturity is only coming from God. He'll grant you spiritual maturity. He'll give you remembrance of him. He'll give you knowledge, spiritual knowledge, because that all comes from him anyway. So like that, if you think that you're striving and you're getting that thing by your own efforts, you're not. So yeah, I mean, people ask these questions like that. Should I try? Should I try to be more spiritual? Should I try to up my game and advance in spiritual life? Do I have to worry about advancement in spiritual life, in spiritual consciousness? No, not really. Not really. Once you got that initial, once you're over that initial realization, and what does Rama say? Rama says it should be once only, Sakrideva. It doesn't have to be continuous. It doesn't have to be continuous. It doesn't have to be. What is spiritual maturity would indicate that at the time of death, one is spiritually mature and he thinks about God and he goes to God, like that, which is what Krishna says in the Gita. If you think of me, you'll come to me, like that. Whatever you think of at the time of death, that you will attain. He says those things. But he says after that, he says the Charma Sloka. So the Charma Sloka supersedes all those other things. All those other things that you read in the rest of the Gita. I practically feel like cutting the Gita off. Cutting the whole thing off and just having the Charma Sloka. Don't read the rest of it, because you're going to get sidetracked. You're going to think, I have to remember the Lord at the time of death. I have to do Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, because it's stated in the Gita. No, forget about that. The Charma Sloka is said in lieu of all those other things. It says, give up those things. So give up thinking that you have to be spiritually mature. Give up thinking that you have to do Bhakti Yoga. Give up thinking that you have to be spiritually mature or whatever it is, like that, and just surrender unto me. And Rama says once only has to be done. And Varaha says you don't have to remember me at the time of death. I'll save you. I'll save you. So just think of is a moment. Surrender is a momentary mental realization that you're the property of God, you're the slave of God, servant of God. That's it, finished. The whole thing is finished. The rest of it is in his hands. Everything is now in his hands. Now that we've understood this, everything is his hands. So what are we doing here? We're killing time. We're just waiting for that to happen, for moksha to happen, like that. While we're waiting, we can do Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. We can do all these acts of devotion and things like that. We can try to strive for spiritual maturity while we're waiting. But whether we try or whether we don't try while we're waiting, we've already performed property. We've already come to the momentary realization, and therefore we'll be successful. Okay, so let's leave it there.